On my 60th birthday, I sat alone at a table set for two. The roast was getting cold. The candles had burned almost to the bottom. At 9:47 p.m., I called my oldest son. He answered with a sigh. "Dad, I'm kind of busy here." That was the moment something inside me finally broke. Within 30 days, I sold my shop, closed my accounts, and left Boston without leaving an address. 3 months later, in a quiet lakeside cabin, the past I had been waiting for finally came knocking. What happened next changed everything I thought I understood about my own family. This story starts heavy, but I'm glad you're here. Before we begin, drop a comment for me. Where are you listening from and what time is it there? I read every one, and your presence here matters. Quick note, some details are fictionalized for storytelling, but the message at the heart of this is what I hope stays with you. I have repaired thousands of clocks in my life, and I know exactly what a dying clock sounds like: an uneven, hesitating tick, then a complete stop. Today is my 60th birthday, and I realize my family shares that exact same sound. I sit alone in Garrison Timepieces, my Beacon Hill shop, surrounded by the rhythmic ticking of hundreds of timepieces, all keeping perfect time, except the one mechanism that mattered most. Warm yellow light illuminates my workbench, and the 19th century pendulum clock someone left for repair 3 weeks ago and never claimed. Its brass gears lie disassembled before me, each piece arranged in the order I removed them. The phone sits on my desk, silent all morning. No calls from Ronan. No calls from Hayes. My two sons, 32 and 28, have apparently decided December 5th requires no acknowledgement this year. I run a brass gear through my fingers, feeling cold metal warm against my skin, and consider calling them. Then I set it down. Beside the half-repaired clock sits a photograph of Eleanor at 35, frozen in time when everything was simple. The frame's glass is spotless. I clean it every Monday without thinking. Eleanor Garrison, my wife, dead 8 years from ovarian cancer at 57. She looks back at me with that slight smile she always had. Both require meticulous care to run on time. One I can fix, the other I cannot. The shop smells of machine oil and aged wood brass polish lingering from yesterday's work. Through door cracks, I catch the metallic scent of winter cold. Boston's December arrived early. Snow began falling at 9 and hasn't stopped. I sip my coffee, bitter, gone cold hours ago, and immediately regret it. Eleanor, if you were here, you would know what to do. But you've been gone 8 years, and I've learned some mechanisms don't repair themselves no matter how long you wait. They require intervention, precision, the right tool applied at the right moment with the right force. I've been a clockmaker for 37 years. I understand patience. I understand how small gears move large hands. I understand that every mechanism has a point of failure, and if you study it long enough, you can predict exactly when and how it will break. My family broke exactly the way I calculated it would. The ticking surrounds me, grandfather clocks against the east wall, mantel clocks on shelves, pocket watches in the display case, wall clocks marking time in perfect synchronization. Each one I've calibrated myself. A customer once joked I must be in league with the atomic clock in Boulder. I smiled and told him it's just practice. What I didn't tell him is that precision requires obsession. The ability to notice when something is off by even a fraction of a second. Years of watching, measuring, adjusting, never accepting anything less than perfect synchronization. How many birthdays does a man celebrate alone before he stops calling them celebrations and starts calling them measurements? This is my 8th birthday without Eleanor. My 2nd without a call from either son. 8 years, 96 months, 2,920 days. I've used every single one of them. The pendulum clock's mainspring sits coiled on my workbench like a question. I examine it through my jeweler's loupe, the tiny stress fractures that accumulated over decades until the mechanism could no longer sustain its rhythm. A clock dies slowly, then all at once. So did my marriage. So did my relationship with my sons. But unlike this pendulum clock, I cannot simply replace the damaged parts of my family and wind them back into motion. What's broken there requires a different kind of repair. The kind that starts with understanding exactly how the damage occurred, who applied the stress, who profited from the fracture, and who waited in the shadows with the patience of a craftsman who knows rushing a repair only makes things worse. The afternoon light fades to twilight. Snow continues to fall, coating Beacon Hill's narrow streets in white. I should close up. The last customer left 3 hours ago, a woman picking up her grandmother's restored pocket watch. She cried when I handed it to her. I didn't. I've learned not to cry over timepieces that aren't mine to keep. I stand joints protesting after 6 hours at the workbench and begin my closing routine. Tools returned to designated spaces. Work light off. Display case locked. I pull on my wool coat and reach for the overhead light switch. That's when I see him. A figure stands across the street in the falling snow, staring directly at my shop. Not moving. Not pretending to window shop or wait for someone. Just watching. The street lamp illuminates his expensive coat, his upright posture, the kind of stillness that comes from deliberate observation. I don't move. My hand hovers near the light switch. The figure shifts slightly, and something in that movement, the particular way he adjusts his weight, the angle of his shoulders triggers recognition, like a key turning in a lock. I know that walk. I've known it for 30 years. When I look directly at him, he turns and walks away, quickly, footprints disappearing as fresh snow fills them in. Within seconds, he's gone around the corner. I stand frozen in the darkness of my shop for a long moment. Around me, hundreds of clocks continue their synchronized ticking, each marking seconds with mechanical perfection. Outside, the street is empty again. Just snow and street lamps and ordinary Friday evening quiet. Then I smile for the first time all day. So it begins, right on schedule. Some mechanisms don't require winding. They simply wait for the precise moment to engage. I've been waiting 8 years, measuring every variable, calculating every probability, preparing every gear. And now finally, the first piece has moved exactly where I predicted it would. I turn off the lights and lock the door behind me, that smile still on my face as I walk toward my car through the falling snow. My 60th birthday, I decide, was not a measurement after all. It was a starting point. I used to believe there were certain things a person never needed to be reminded of, like their father's birthday. Friday evening, alone in my apartment above the shop, I call Ronan for the first time in 3 months. The phone rings 4 times before he answers. Dad. His voice carries the particular tone of someone interrupted. Are you okay? Not a genuine question. Just an opening line designed to end the call quickly. Behind his voice, I hear music. Laughter. The unmistakable sound of celebration glasses, clinking multiple conversations, overlapping someone shouting a toast. Ronan Garrison, 32 years old, calls from his New York office, where a party drowns out any pretense of filial warmth. I'm fine, I tell him. Just wanted to hear your voice. Yeah. A pause. More laughter in the background. Listen, Dad, I'm actually in the middle of something. Did you need anything specific? I let the silence stretch for exactly 3 seconds. It's my birthday, I say. 2 seconds of nothing. Then, oh, right, happy birthday. The words arrive flat, obligatory, already moving past me toward whatever celebration he's missing by being on this call. Do you need anything? He asks, irritation creeping into his voice. I'm kind of busy here. No, I tell him. I need nothing. I hang up before he can offer another hollow pleasantry. The phone goes dark in my hand. I sit staring at Eleanor's empty chair across from me, the chair she occupied for 35 years of marriage, now holding only absence and the particular weight of questions I can no longer ask her. The weekend passes in the rhythm of routine. Saturday morning, I open the shop for half a day. 3 customers. 2 pickups, 1 repair estimate. By noon, I lock up and return to the back workshop where I've been clearing storage. I'm selling the shop. Have been preparing for 3 weeks now, sorting through decades of accumulated tools, parts, documentation. Every drawer cataloged. Every shelf inventoried. The precision of dismantling a life's work requires the same attention I give to dismantling a clock movement. In a storage box marked Personal 1987, I find Eleanor's diary 3 weeks ago. I've been carrying it around since then, unable to open it. Now Saturday afternoon, with December light fading outside, I finally turn to the first page. Her handwriting elegant, controlled unmistakably, hers fills the lined paper. The entry is dated March 15th, 1987. She was 35. Her handwriting still young, still certain of everything. Ronan was not yet born. I have done something I can never tell Russell, she wrote. Raymond thinks I will never speak of it. But there are secrets where silence becomes a crime. I stop reading. Set the diary down. Look at the photograph of Eleanor on the shelf, the same one from my workbench downstairs, the one I've kept for 8 years. The face I thought I knew completely now, holding secrets that rewrite 30 years of memory. 8 years after Eleanor passed, I am still finding pieces of her that I never knew existed. I close the diary. Unsurprised. It is merely a confirmation, cold and precise as the readout of a gauge. What I suspected 20 years ago, what I chose not to investigate then, now sits documented in her own hand. Some mechanisms announce their failure loudly. Others break in silence, and you only discover the damage when you finally look inside. Monday morning arrives with fresh snow. I open the shop at 9, begin work on a carriage clock that's been waiting since Thanksgiving. The mainspring needs replacement. I have the part ordered, expect delivery Wednesday. At 10 o'clock the door chimes. Sterling Hewitt walks in carrying a leather briefcase and wearing his trademark gray suit perfectly pressed, not a thread out of place. 63 years old, he moves with the careful dignity of a man who has spent 3 decades cultivating trust. His cologne reaches me before his handshake does, subtle, professional, expensive. Russell, he says, his voice gentle, in the way he's maintained for 30 years of friendship. I hope I'm not interrupting. I recognize him, of course. The same man who stood across the street Friday night, watching my shop through the falling snow. He doesn't mention that. Neither do I. Never an interruption, I tell him, gesturing to the chair beside my workbench. He sits, sets his briefcase on his lap with deliberate care. The small talk arrives on schedule. How am I managing? How's business, the weather turning cold early this year? I let him perform his script. Every word rehearsed. Every pause calculated. Finally he reaches the reason. At your age, Russell, you should have a clear plan, he says, extracting a document from his briefcase. I can help you organize everything properly. Estate documents, power of attorney, just basic protections. He slides the papers across my workbench. Yellowed legal forms professionally prepared. The letterhead reads, Hewitt and Associates Estate Planning. I read every line slowly. The language grants Sterling Hewitt full authority over my financial decisions, medical decisions, property transactions. Standard boilerplate for elderly clients who need assistance. The kind of document that transfers power so smoothly, the victim never notices until it's too late. I set it down. Resume fixing the carriage clock, my hands steady on the small screwdriver. I will think about it, I tell him. Sterling's smile never reaches his eyes, the smile of a man who believes his mechanism is flawless, unaware that someone has already counted every tooth on every gear. Of course, he says. Take your time. I'm here whenever you're ready. He leaves the document on my workbench, shakes my hand, walks out into the December cold. I watch through the window as he disappears around the corner, his footprints filling slowly with fresh snow. Then I reach for my phone. The number I dial doesn't exist in my official contacts. When someone answers, I don't say hello. I don't explain. He just came by, I say. A pause, then understood. I hang up. Look at the power of attorney document sitting on my workbench. I don't read it again. I've read enough. Some clocks you repair. Others you simply watch until they reveal exactly how they're designed to fail. 3 weeks after that phone call, I drove out of Boston for the first time. Not for work, not because someone needed me, but because I was finally ready. The cabin sits alone on 3 acres of Silver Lake shoreline, 2 hours north of the city. Snow covers the roof in uneven drifts. The lake itself is partially frozen, dark patches of water, visible between sheets of ice that crack and groan when the temperature shifts. Everything here is distinct from Beacon Hill. The air crisper, the silence deeper, the isolation absolute. I've been here 5 days now. Before leaving Boston, I finished everything that needed to be done. The shop sold to a young couple who planned to convert it into an artisan bakery. My apartment above it emptied, lease terminated, forwarding address filed with the post office. Every repair order completed or transferred. Every customer notified. Every tool cataloged and either sold or packed. Exactly how much I accomplished in those 3 weeks I will not reveal just yet. The cabin requires little maintenance. Heat comes from a wood-burning stove I feed twice daily. Water runs cold from the well but flows strong. Electricity works. The bed is narrow but sufficient. I brought 3 boxes of possessions, clothes, documents, Eleanor's photograph, and the tools I couldn't bear to sell. No neighbors within shouting distance, which suits me perfectly. For the first time in 3 weeks, I slept 8 hours straight the night I arrived. If you've spent years waking at 3 in the morning with that particular species of loneliness, you understand that's basically a miracle. The silence here is different from Boston's silence. In the city, quiet means absence of sound, against a background hum of traffic, distant sirens, neighbors through shared walls. Here, silence is the actual presence of nothing, just wind through pine trees and ice settling on the lake. I wake at dawn from habit even without work waiting. Make coffee in the small kitchen. Watch morning light spread across the frozen lake. The world here moves slower, or perhaps I'm finally moving at the speed I was meant to. The first night here, I unpacked Eleanor's photograph and placed it on the small desk by the window, same position it held in Boston, facing the place where I work, where I think, where I plan. She looks at me now across the cabin's single room, with that same slight smile as though she knows exactly why I'm here, and approves of the precision required to get this far. Day 5 arrives with fresh snow and temperatures below freezing. I'm splitting firewood behind the cabin when I hear boots crunching across the snow-covered driveway. I set down the axe and walk around to the front porch. A woman stands at my door holding a covered pot with both hands. She's 58, maybe 60, with graying hair pulled back, and eyes that suggest she's spent decades looking straight at people without flinching. Her coat is practical, down-filled, well-worn, the kind you buy to last 10 winters. She sees me and doesn't startle. "I'm Celeste," she says, no preamble. "I live about a quarter-mile down the road. Retired teacher, 3 years widowed." I walk toward her slowly, not smiling, making it clear I didn't invite this visit and don't particularly welcome it. She doesn't retreat. Instead, she sets the pot on the porch step between us. "You don't have to talk," she continues, her voice carrying the particular authority of someone who spent 30 years managing classrooms. "I just don't want my new neighbor freezing to death before February." I look at her for a long moment. Most people would fill the silence with nervous chatter. She simply looks back, waiting comfortable with the pause. "It's soup," she adds. "Vegetable, nothing fancy." I step aside and gesture toward the door. She picks up the pot and walks into my cabin, without hesitation, taking in the sparse interior, with a single sweeping glance the narrow bed, the desk with Eleanor's photograph, the wood stove radiating heat, the boxes I haven't yet unpacked. She doesn't comment, just carries the pot to the small kitchen table and sets it down. "Bowls," she asks. I retrieve 2 from the cabinet. She ladles soup thick with carrots, potatoes, herbs, the smell of something made with care rather than convenience. Steam rises between us as we sit across from each other at the rough-hewn table. For the first time in 3 weeks, I sit at a kitchen table with another human being. The first spoonful carries warmth down my throat. Salt vegetables, the unmistakable taste of someone caring without agenda. I didn't realize how hungry I was until this moment. We eat in silence. Not awkward silence, but the comfortable kind between 2 people who don't require conversation to justify sharing space. The wind whistles around the cabin corners. Ice cracks somewhere out on the lake, with a sound like a tree branch snapping. Celeste finishes her soup, sets down her spoon, and looks at me with those direct eyes. "I won't pry," she says. "Small towns are good for privacy if you establish boundaries early. I'm establishing mine now. I'll bring soup occasionally. You can return the pot when you're ready or not. I won't show up unannounced again unless I see smoke where there shouldn't be smoke. She stands, extends her hand. I shake it, her grip firm, brief, practical. Some people move to small towns to disappear. Others move to small towns to finally become visible on their own terms. She's at the door when she turns back, hand on the frame, and asks the question that cuts through every careful defense I've built. Who are you hiding from up here? I freeze. The question hangs in the cold air between us, sharp and direct as a scalpel. After a long beat, I answer, no one. I tell her quietly, I came here to wait. She studies my face for a long moment, those teacher's eyes reading something I haven't spoken. Then she nods as though some unspoken test has been passed. Fair enough, she says. She walks down the porch steps and across the snow-covered driveway. I watch her disappear into the tree line, following whatever path connects her property to mine. The pot of soup sits on my table, still warm. Eleanor's photograph watches from the desk. I close the door against the cold and return to the window. Outside, the frozen lake stretches white and silent under gray December sky. Somewhere in Boston, mechanisms I set in motion 3 weeks ago continue turning. Sterling Hewitt believes he's won. My sons believe I've simply given up and disappeared. They don't understand what waiting means when practiced with precision. I pour myself another bowl of soup and sit down to watch the afternoon light fade across the ice. My first Tuesday at Silver Lake, I found the bookstore, or rather, the bookstore found me, in the way that the right places always do when you need them most. The waiting Celeste asked about requires structure, routines, ways to occupy the mind, while mechanisms turn elsewhere. I drive into town that morning, the last day of December, looking for those routines in a place I've never lived before. The bookstore sits on Main Street between a hardware store and a closed diner. No sign above the door, just the word books, painted in fading letters on the window glass. I park and walk inside. The warmth hits me first, a wood-burning fireplace crackling in the corner, casting amber light across ceiling-high shelves packed with leather spines. The scent of aged paper fills the air, mixing with wood smoke and the faint trace of coffee brewing somewhere in a back room. Every surface holds stacks of books arranged in an order that suggests deliberate curation rather than alphabetical convenience. A man stands behind the counter watching me with the particular attention of someone who reads people as fluently as books. 55 maybe, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that suggest he spent decades observing for purposes I cannot yet identify but instinctively recognize. Looking for anything particular? He asks, his voice carrying neither false enthusiasm nor dismissal. European horology, I tell him. 18th and 19th century if you have it. He doesn't react with the usual confusion that question generates in ordinary bookstores. Instead, he nods once and moves to a shelf in the back corner, not searching, just walking directly to where he already knows that specific category lives. Desmond Whitaker, he says over his shoulder. I own this place. Russell. He pulls 3 volumes and brings them to the counter. Sets them down with care, first editions, properly preserved, exactly the texts someone serious about clockmaking history would seek. Not random inventory. Specific, intentional collection. The shop feels deliberately curated, not for profit, but for a different kind of purpose I can't yet name. I pick up the first volume, run my fingers across the worn leather binding. The price written inside the cover is reasonable. Too reasonable for a first edition in this condition. You read McCarthy? Desmond asks, gesturing toward a shelf behind me. I turn. The entire section devoted to Cormac McCarthy hardcovers, paperbacks, first editions, and protective sleeves. I do, I tell him. What follows is not the small talk of a shopkeeper trying to make a sale. It's genuine debate. We argue about Blood Meridian, whether Judge Holden represents pure evil or something more complex. We discuss the road and whether redemption remains possible in McCarthy's vision of apocalypse. We dissect violence and consequence in prose that refuses to look away from either. 45 minutes pass like 10. I find myself engaged with insights I never expected to hear in a small lakeside town. Desmond doesn't just know McCarthy's work, He understands it the way you understand something that matters personally. We argue the way you argue when both people actually care about being right, which means both people are willing to be wrong. Eleanor Ashford. She kept her maiden name professionally, even after 35 years of marriage, had handed me Blood Meridian 20 years ago, and said, "If you want to understand what people are capable of, start here." She was right then. She would be right now. "Your wife read McCarthy?" Desmond asks, somehow extracting that information from the way I spoke. "She did. Past tense, 8 years gone." He nods, doesn't offer condolences, which I appreciate. Just acknowledgement that some things don't need verbal decoration. Eleanor would have liked this man. I say more to myself than to him. She always said the best conversations happened in unexpected places. She was right, Desmond replies. I buy the horology volume, and a McCarthy I don't own yet. Desmond wraps them in brown paper with practiced efficiency. The total comes to less than I'd pay for one of these books in Boston. As I reach for the package, Desmond slides a small manila envelope across the counter. No explanation. No words. Just a brief nod. I take it without questioning, without surprise. The exchange happens in perfect silence, mutual understanding, requiring no language. There are conversations that happen with words, and conversations that happen in the space between them. This envelope exchange belongs entirely to the second category. Thank you. I say the words covering both the books and what we're not discussing. See you next week, he replies. I carry the package and envelope to my car. The cold air hits my face after the warmth of the bookstore. Wind cuts across the empty street. New Year's Eve morning. In a small town, most people still inside preparing for celebrations. They'll pretend matter. I sit in the driver's seat, engine off, and open the envelope. Photographs. 3 of them. Surveillance angles, time-stamped, professionally shot. Sterling Hewitt entering the Beacon Hill house I sold. Sterling inside my former shop, now gutted for renovation. Sterling meeting with someone I recognize immediately, Ronan. A typed note. Single page, coded but clear to someone who knows what to look for. Subject made contact, December 28th. Confirmed access to property as discussed. Secondary target present for consultation, December 29th. Recommend next phase proceed on schedule. Timeline estimate 3 to 4 weeks. I finish reading. Fold it closed. Stare out the windshield toward the frozen lake visible at the end of Main Street. Everything is unfolding exactly as I calculated. Only slightly faster than anticipated. Sterling took the bait. Ronan's involved. The mechanisms I set in motion before leaving Boston continue turning with the precision of well-maintained clockwork. I start the car and drive back toward the cabin, the envelope tucked inside my coat pocket. The horology book sits on the passenger seat, legitimate purchase covering illegitimate exchange. Desmond Whitaker runs a bookstore the way some people run operations, with careful attention to detail and absolute discretion. I chose Silver Lake for specific reasons. The isolation, yes. The distance from Boston, certainly. But also for what and who was already here waiting for exactly this moment. By the time I reach the cabin, snow has begun falling again. I park and sit watching it accumulate on the windshield, thinking about timing and patience, and the particular satisfaction of watching your own plan execute itself. Tonight is New Year's Eve. Tomorrow a new year begins, and somewhere in Boston, Sterling Hewitt believes he's won something. He has no idea what he's actually started. I have learned that truth never comes all at once. It drips page by page, word by word, like an hourglass that cannot be inverted. That night, New Year's Eve, I sit at the cabin desk with Eleanor's diary, while the rest of the world prepares to celebrate. The surveillance photographs from Desmond remain in my coat pocket. The plan unfolds in Boston without me. Here I turn to a page Eleanor wrote when she was 38, 1994, 2 years after Ronan was born. Her handwriting covers the page in that elegant script I know better than my own. Raymond met me one last time today, she wrote. He still thinks the child is his. I did not lie to him, I simply did not tell the truth. Russell must never know this. I read it 3 times. Set the diary down. Look out the cabin window at the frozen lake where a lone bird tests its weight on the ice, stepping carefully, testing each placement before committing. I understand that feeling intimately. I have been walking on thin ice for 20 years, knowing Ronan wasn't mine. Never speaking it, raising him anyway, because that's what you do when you choose fatherhood over biology. Eleanor kept her secret. I kept mine. We circled each other in careful silence, both protecting the same lie from different directions. Raymond. Not a name I recognize. Not Sterling. His first name is Sterling, middle name Charles I. Verified that years ago. Someone else entirely. Another layer to a conspiracy that goes back further than I calculated. I flip to the next page. It's torn out. Only a tiny fragment remains wedged in the binding where the page was ripped away. I hold it under the desk lamp at an angle, the same technique I use for reading faded engravings on clock faces when the light needs to catch the metal just right. Faint pencil marks emerge. 5 words in Eleanor's handwriting: pendulum clock, museum, true will. I fold the scrap carefully and slip it into my coat pocket right next to my own pocket watch and stare at Eleanor's photograph on the wall. She looks back at me with that knowing expression. You placed it where only I would find it, Maggie, I say aloud to the empty room. Because you trusted me to have enough patience. 5 words. Enough for me to understand Eleanor left behind far more than just a diary. The grandfather clock I sold to Boston Historical Museum in 2019, the one Eleanor would always stare at in my workshop, saying she loved watching the pendulum swing. I thought she admired the mechanism's precision. Turns out she had an entirely different reason: her true will. Hidden inside a clock I built myself. A clock now sitting in a museum's climate-controlled storage, perfectly preserved, waiting for someone who knows exactly where to look. I close the diary and brew fresh coffee. Outside, midnight arrives. Fireworks echo across the frozen lake from town, distant celebration of a new year. 2025 begins while I sit alone with evidence of deceptions that started decades before tonight. 17 days pass. I narrate what happened during those 17 days because I was not present in that Boston house that night. But I know exactly what transpired because I prepared for that precise moment 4 years ago. January 17th, 2025. Friday night. Outdoor temperature in Boston hits -12 degrees Celsius. Via phone app from Silver Lake. I remotely deactivated the heating system in the Beacon Hill house, the house I had signed over to Ronan and Hayes in November, but whose smart home systems I had quietly retained administrative access to. They never thought to check. Why would they? The old man didn't understand technology. Interior temperature dropped to 4 degrees within 6 hours. Unbearable cold. Pipes on the verge of freezing. Ronan, Hayes, and Sterling, who had been using the house for their planning sessions, believing it abandoned, were forced to act. They couldn't call a heating company without revealing their presence. They needed warmth. The only heat source, a small mechanical safe in the study wall. Not electric. Old-fashioned combination lock. But it radiated warmth because I'd installed a chemical heat pack inside it that activated when the house temperature dropped below 5 degrees. They opened it. Found an envelope and an engraved pocket watch bearing both sons' names, gift I'd supposedly left them before disappearing. Sterling read Eleanor's letter aloud. This house never belonged to you. They spent 47 minutes discussing what to do. Ronan angry. Hayes panicking. Sterling calculating. Every word captured. Nobody noticed that the second hand of that engraved pocket watch was sweeping steadily despite looking like an antique with no battery. Nobody questioned why a mechanical watch sat in a warm safe. A clock doesn't require your gaze to keep turning. Mechanisms operate according to their design, whether witnessed or not. And this mechanism has been running for 4 years, waiting for exactly this moment. The pocket watch was a recording device. Sophisticated, expensive, disguised perfectly, and entirely legal because of the conspicuous surveillance notice I mounted on the house's entry in 2020. These premises are monitored for security purposes. They ignored the sign, thinking it referred to the security cameras I'd visibly removed when I sold the property. They were wrong. Saturday morning, January 18th, I returned from my lake walk to find a new encrypted file in the secure folder on my laptop, uploaded automatically from the device at 3:47 a.m. 47 minutes of audio data. I pour fresh coffee, strong black, the bitter taste of 4 years of preparation coming to fruition. The smell fills the small cabin. My hands carry the permanent trace of machine oil that never quite washes away. I plug in my headphones. The leather pads settle over my ears, blocking out the sound of wind against the cabin walls and ice cracking somewhere out on the lake. The encrypted file sits on my screen. I hover the cursor over the play button. This is everything. Every word they spoke, believing they were alone. The conspiracy laid bare in their own voices, Ronan, Hayes, Sterling, discussing how to erase me from Eleanor's estate, how to forge documents, how to divide assets they think I'm too old and broken to defend. They have no idea I've been listening for years, watching, documenting, building a case with the patience of someone who spent 37 years repairing mechanisms that require absolute precision. I take one sip of coffee, set the mug down carefully on the desk, right next to Eleanor's photograph. She watches me with that slight smile as though she approves of what's about to unfold. I take a breath. Press play. I have listened to many sounds across 60 years. The ticking of gears, Eleanor's laughter, the breathing of my children when they were small. But that morning I heard the voices of 3 people deciding to erase me from their lives. The first voice through my headphones is Sterling's. Crisp, clear, professional. We file under Chapter 190B, Section 5-303, he says. Incapacitated person's standard cognitive decline, inability to manage financial affairs. The burden of proof is lower than you'd think. Ronan's voice responds tinny through the recording, but unmistakable. And you're certain this works? I've handled cases like this before, Sterling answers. The process is straightforward when the documentation is clean. Papers rustle in the background. The key is medical documentation. I've retained Dr. Calloway. He'll provide the competency evaluation we need. 2 appointments, basic cognitive tests, and a written opinion stating your father can no longer manage his own affairs. The recording quality exceeds my expectations. Every syllable crystal clear. Every conspiratorial whisper captured. The surveillance equipment cost me $8,000 4 years ago, money I saved from side repairs never touching our joint accounts. Worth every cent. I take a sip of coffee. It's already going cold. Hayes speaks for the first time, his voice younger, uncertain. What about Dad's attorney? Won't he fight this? Sterling's laugh comes through sharp and brief. Your father doesn't have an attorney. He has me, had me, and I'm the one filing the petition. Silence on the recording. Then chairs scraping. They're moving around that freezing Beacon Hill house, huddled in the living room around the safe that radiated just enough warmth to draw them exactly where I needed them. The timeline is straightforward, Sterling continues. We file the guardianship petition Monday. Court hearing within 30 days. If your father doesn't contest, and at his age he probably doesn't even know he has the right to contest, we have full legal authority within 90 days. 90 days, Ronan repeats. And then what? Then we manage the estate properly. The Beacon Hill property alone is worth $850,000. Plus retirement accounts, investments, the shop sale proceeds. Total assets approximately $2.3 million. I hear papers rustling. Hayes asking questions about division percentages. Sterling explaining trust structures, tax implications, the mechanics of liquidating a life. There is a particular kind of violence in hearing your own erasure, discussed with the casual efficiency of men planning a real estate transaction, property to be liquidated, assets to be redistributed, an inconvenient life to be legally nullified. I set my coffee down. My hands remain perfectly steady. The recording continues. Ronan and Hayes debate logistics. Sterling provides answers with the practiced confidence of someone who's orchestrated this exact scenario before. Every detail covered. Every contingency planned. Then at minute 43, I hear doors closing, footsteps retreating, the cold echo of the empty house. Sterling's voice continues. Alone now, muttering to himself in that frozen room. That old fool raised 2 kids that aren't even his for 32 years. He says, speaking to no one, he deserves to lose everything. I pull my headphones off, set them on the desk beside the laptop, sit in absolute stillness. For exactly 3 minutes, I don't move. Don't think. Just exist in the space between what I knew intellectually and what I now know with absolute certainty. Sterling knows, has known, probably longer than I have. The affair with Raymond, Ronan's paternity, Hayes's legitimacy, all of it catalogued in Sterling's mind, weaponized into justification for theft. What should a man feel when he hears confirmation that 32 years of fatherhood meant nothing to the people who benefited most from it? I sit with that question for those 3 minutes. Ultimately, I decide I feel nothing at all, and that is the most powerful answer possible. Emotion clouds judgment. Anger creates mistakes. Grief paralyzes action. What I need now is the same cold precision I apply to repairing a watch movement, each piece placed exactly where it belongs, each action calculated to produce a specific result. Sterling called me a fool. But fools don't spend 4 years building an evidence file. Fools don't plant surveillance devices and wait patiently for the trap to spring. Fools react. I plan. I open my laptop email, type a message to the single address in my secure directory, the number I called from my shop in December, the ally whose identity I keep even from myself in these recordings. The message is 4 words and an attachment. Commence Phase 2, file attached. I attach the 47-minute recording. Full metadata. Chain of custody documentation. Timestamps. Device serial numbers. Everything a prosecutor needs to verify authenticity. My cursor hovers over the send button for exactly 2 seconds. Then I click. The progress bar fills. The email disappears into encrypted transmission. Within seconds, it will reach the investigator. Within hours, Phase 2 begins. I don't know all the details of Phase 2. That's intentional. I hired professionals who understand that the less I know about their methods, the more protected I am when questions come. I gave them objectives. They handle execution. My job was to provide evidence. I've done that. I stand up, grab my heavy wool coat from the hook by the door, step outside into morning cold so sharp it burns my lungs. The frozen lake stretches before me, catching sunlight in blinding white brilliance. Ice and mineral stillness. No sound except wind through bare trees and my boots crunching across snow. I walk to the shoreline and stand looking out across that frozen expanse. I need to remember why I started all of this 4 years ago. Not for money. I never cared about Eleanor's inheritance. Not for revenge exactly, though that's part of it. Not even for justice in the abstract legal sense. I started this because 32 years of fatherhood deserved more than being erased by paperwork and lies. Because Eleanor, whatever her faults, deserved her actual wishes honored. Because men like Sterling Hewitt operate in shadows, and someone needed to turn on the lights. The cold air clears my head. My breath comes out in visible clouds. Somewhere in Boston, Sterling believes he's won. Ronan and Hayes believe their plan is proceeding smoothly. They're about to discover what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. I turn back toward the cabin. The email has been sent. Phase 2 has begun. And I have exactly what I need, 47 minutes of men destroying themselves with their own words, recorded, legally preserved, perfectly ready to be deployed with surgical precision. Inside, I pour fresh coffee and return to the desk. The recording still sits open on my laptop screen. I close the file carefully, preserve it in 3 separate encrypted backups, and shut down the computer. Then I sit in silence, watching morning light move across the frozen lake, and wait for what comes next. The following Sunday morning, my phone buzzed for the first time since arriving at Silver Lake. I glanced at the display, saw Ronan's name, and took another bite of my fried eggs before sliding to answer. Phase 2 began yesterday. Today I eat breakfast while the mechanisms continue turning. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, I swallow, take a sip of coffee, and answer. Dad. Ronan's voice comes through strained panic underneath poorly rehearsed control. I recognize that tone. the sound of a man who's discovered something he doesn't understand. Ronan, I say, calm, neutral. I take another bite of toast. Dad, there's a letter from Mom in the safe. We need to talk about what it means. I chew slowly. Butter and salt and crisp bread. Through the window, Silver Lake stretches white and frozen. I'm listening, I tell him. Papers rustle on his end. He's holding Eleanor's letter, the one I placed in that safe 4 years ago, along with the engraved watch. It says, his voice catches. It says, "This house never belonged to you." What does that mean? I take another sip of coffee. Lower the mug deliberately. I have no knowledge of any such letter, I say. The lie is perfect. Calm, unhurried, unshakable. What? Ronan's control slips. Dad, I'm holding it right now. Mom's handwriting. It was in your safe. Eleanor kept many private documents. I interrupt. I was not privy to all of them. Silence. I hear him breathing short, sharp breaths. There was also a watch, he continues, engraved with mine and Hayes's names. Why was it in the safe? I cut a piece of egg. The yolk runs perfectly, 3 minutes exactly how Eleanor taught me. I'm afraid I can't help you with that, Ronan. His voice rises. Dad, this is serious. The letter talks about the house. Then perhaps you should consult an attorney, I say. Sterling Hewitt comes to mind. I believe you know him. 7 seconds of silence. I count them. Power is not in the man who shouts loudest. It's in the man who can eat breakfast while his enemies panic, who can answer a desperate call with the same calm he'd use to discuss the weather. I don't understand, Ronan says finally. Why are you being like this? Like what? Like you don't care. Like none of this matters. I set down my fork. Look out at the frozen lake where a crow tests its weight on the ice. What exactly do you believe should matter to me, Ronan? Another pause. When he speaks again, the panic has fully emerged. The house, the estate, Mom's will. Don't you want to know what's happening? I know exactly what's happening, I tell him quietly. That stops him. I hear his breath catch. What do you mean? I take another sip of coffee. The bitterness spreads across my tongue. I say that I have complete confidence everything will proceed exactly as it should. Dad, I hang up, not with anger. Just a simple, decisive end to a conversation going nowhere. The phone goes silent. I set it face down and resume eating. Outside, Silver Lake rests smooth and stark white under morning glare. Frozen. Patient. Revealing nothing. There are moments when silence is the most complete answer a man can give. I finish my eggs, my toast, my coffee. Every bite measured unhurried exactly as I intended before Ronan interrupted. The crow takes flight, black wings against white snow, and disappears. I carry my plate to the small sink. Turn on warm water. Add dish soap. Wash the plate with deliberate care. I reach for the dish towel on the oven handle. Eleanor's blue cotton towel bought in Portland in 2010. Faded now from years of washing, fabric thinned and soft, but still functional. I look at Eleanor's photograph on the shelf above the sink. Her face at 35 before everything became complicated, and think about what she would say about this moment, this call, this silence I've chosen. She'd understand. Eleanor always understood the value of timing, of patience, of waiting for precisely the right moment to reveal precisely the right truth. I dry the plate slowly, running the towel across ceramic in careful circles until no water remains. Then I hang the towel back on its hook with the same precision Eleanor used for 30 years, each fold exactly as she taught me. Certain things must be returned to their exact rightful place. The plate to the cupboard, the towel to the hook, the house to its rightful owners, the truth to the light. I intend to return them all. I place the clean plate in the cabinet, close the door, and walk to the window. My phone sits silent on the table. Ronan won't call back today. He's too busy trying to understand what just happened, trying to decode the calm in my voice, trying to figure out what I know that he doesn't. He'll figure it out eventually. They all will. But by then, the mechanisms will have already turned. The evidence already filed. The trap already closed. I stand at the window watching morning light move across the frozen water, thinking about Wednesday. By Wednesday, Ronan will discover the house carries far more weight than he ever imagined. By Wednesday, everything changes. But today, I simply stand in my small cabin kitchen, with Eleanor's blue towel hanging precisely where it belongs, and wait for the gears to complete their rotation. I knew Ronan would march into the bank that week, I knew, because I had monitored his margin call debts long enough to understand what a man does when he runs out of options. Wednesday afternoon. Mile 4 of my 6-mile walk around the lake perimeter. My phone vibrates in my coat pocket. I pull it out. Encrypted message from my investigator. The text is brief. First Republic, 10:30 a.m. Both sons. Refinance attempt. Stopped cold. I don't break stride. I continue walking as I open the full report attachment. The investigator's report included a bank employee's account obtained through a contact Dale maintained at the institution. The senior loan officer at First Republic Bank scanned the property records and froze mid-keystroke, a career banker recognizing immediately when a real estate transaction has gone catastrophically wrong for the applicants. According to the report, the officer keyed in more commands, then looked up with an uncomfortable expression that Ronan would recognize from every creditor meeting he's attended in the past 6 months. I didn't need to be in that room to picture his face when the answer came. The property records showed what I filed 4 years ago. Beacon Hill House registered under Boston Landmarks Commission as a protected landmark property bound by a perpetual conservation easement. I recorded in December 2020, right after Eleanor died. The paperwork took 11 months to process, cost me $14,000 in legal fees and architectural surveys, but it was worth every cent. The easement means the property cannot be substantially altered, demolished, or developed without commission approval, a process requiring minimum 18 months and $75,000 in application fees alone. More critically, the easement deed I filed included a covenant requiring the property owner to maintain the structure to Grade A historical preservation standards independently verified annually at owner's expense estimated at $60,000 to $90,000 per year, depending on condition. Non-waivable, permanent. Attached to the title, not the owner. Ronan and Hayes sat across from that loan officer document spread before them, watching their financial solution evaporate in real time. I can visualize Ronan's face perfectly when that number appeared on the screen. $85,000 every year, forever. The wind cuts across the frozen lake as I read. My breath mists in the cold air. January in New Hampshire doesn't soften for anyone's convenience. There are gifts that come wrapped in obligation and gifts that come wrapped in chains. The difference is whether the giver warns you about the weight before you accept and whether you're wise enough to ask. I warned no one. They asked nothing. The report continues with details I already know, but enjoy reading anyway. When I gift deeded the Beacon Hill house to Ronan and Hayes last November, 3 days before Thanksgiving, signed and notarized on November 22nd, I left 8 years of accumulated property taxes deliberately unpaid. Total amount $380,000, under Massachusetts general laws. Chapter 59, Section 11. When property transfers via gift deed, all existing financial encumbrances transfer with it. Tax liens, municipal fees, outstanding utilities. Everything. The recipients who accept the property inherit every debt attached to it. Ronan and Hayes signed the acceptance documents December 3rd. Their attorney Sterling Hewitt reviewed the paperwork and found nothing legally objectionable because there was nothing legally objectionable to find. I committed no fraud, made no false representations, simply offered a gift they were eager to accept. The contract is ironclad, entirely legal. They accepted the house, they inherited the debt. That's exactly how gift deed law operates. I fold my phone and slip it back into my pocket. Keep walking. The trail curves along the eastern shore, where patches of darker ice show where the lake has begun thinning. The current runs strongest here, working invisibly beneath the surface. How many years does it take to build a trap so perfect? The prey walks in willingly, signs the paperwork gratefully, and only realizes they're caught when they try to leave. 4 years for me. 4 years of filing historical designation paperwork. 4 years of letting property taxes accumulate while I paid just enough each quarter to avoid foreclosure. 4 years of watching Eleanor's estate settle, watching my sons align with Sterling, watching the conspiracy form with the predictable precision of gears meshing. 4 years of patience while everyone assumed I was simply old and defeated and unaware. The investigator's report includes one final detail that brings genuine satisfaction. When the loan officer explained the situation, the historical designation, the annual fees, the inherited tax debt, Ronan asked if they could surrender the property back to me. The officer's response documented verbatim, "Not without Mr. Russell Garrison's written consent. And even with consent, you remain legally liable for all debts incurred during your period of ownership. They can't leverage it. Can't sell it without paying the back taxes first. Can't surrender it without my permission. Can't even let it fall into foreclosure without the city pursuing them personally for the historical preservation fees. A house worth $850,000 on paper, worth absolutely nothing in practice, and costing them $85,000 every year they keep it. I didn't destroy their inheritance. I gave them exactly what they wanted, their mother's house, and let them discover what it actually costs to own it." The afternoon sun sits low on the horizon, amber light spreading across the ice. My shadow stretches long beside me as I complete the final mile. Everything is proceeding exactly as designed. Sterling believes he's maneuvering toward guardianship petition. Ronan and Hayes believe they're managing a complicated estate situation. None of them understand they're already caught, have been caught since the moment they accepted that gift deed, since the moment Sterling drafted those guardianship papers, since the moment they gathered in that freezing Beacon Hill house to plot my erasure while a recording device captured every word. The ice on Silver Lake has begun thinning in select patches where the current runs strongest underneath water, moving according to laws older than any document humans write. Invisible, relentless, inevitable. I fold my phone away and continue walking the final mile. The weather shows signs of warming. February approaches. Spring will come whether anyone wishes it or not. Everything is thawing at the exact velocity I require. Saturday afternoon, the neighbor knocked on my door for the second time, this time bringing no soup. Only 2 mugs of tea and a question I wasn't entirely prepared to answer. The ice continues thawing. 3 days since my walk and the lake shows more open water each morning. Celeste stands on my porch holding 2 steaming mugs. I open the door and she gestures toward the wooden chairs facing the lake. We sit. She hands me 1 mug herbal tea, chamomile or mint, slightly bitter with honey. The warmth spreads through my cold hands. "Why did you choose clocks?" she asks, not making conversation, genuinely wanting to understand. "Not watches," she continues. "Not general mechanics. Clocks specifically. It has been years since anyone asked about me rather than what I own or what I can provide." I take a sip of tea. Look out at the lake where patches of darker water spread between thinning ice. "Because clocks do not lie," I tell her. "They can run slow, run fast, or stand completely still, but the flaw always lies deep inside, and it can always be repaired if you possess enough patience. Every problem has a solution. Every mechanical problem," I clarify. "If you're willing to invest the time to understand the mechanism." She nods, drinks her tea. The silence stretches comfortable. "And what about human beings?" she asks. "Are they the same?" I set my mug down. Watch a crow land on the ice, test its weight, take flight when the surface shifts. Eleanor used to say I approached broken clocks the way other men approached puzzles, not with frustration, but with the quiet certainty that every problem contained its own solution if you looked closely enough and waited long enough. "Humans are different," I tell Celeste. "There are some people you must simply choose to leave behind, like a clock you've tried everything to fix, to no avail." "Have you tried everything?" The question sits between us. I don't answer immediately. She doesn't press. Just sits drinking her tea, watching the lake. We finish in silence. The afternoon sun slants amber across the water. Wood smoke from a distant fireplace carries on the cold air mixed with melting snow. As she stands to leave, she places her hand on my arm for just a split second, warm through my coat. "Are you repairing Russell?" she asks quietly. "Or are you leaving behind?" I offer no answer. She studies my face, then nods as though she understands something without needing explanation. "Same time next week?" she asks. "I'd like that." She walks back toward her cabin. I watch until she disappears, then carry both mugs inside. Inside my coat pocket, my watch keeps perfect time. Later that week, my phone chimes with the investigator's report. I open it, standing by the window, watching afternoon light fade. Ronan hired an independent attorney, keeping Hayes entirely in the dark, to audit all historical family asset records, looking for leverage, looking for hidden money. He found something. Hayes maintains a hidden LLC account, $180,000, from a 2023 Brookline real estate transaction Hayes never mentioned. Property inherited from Eleanor's side, sold quietly, profits deposited under his wife's maiden name. Ronan confronted Hayes Tuesday afternoon. Hayes denied knowledge. Ronan didn't believe him. The conversation escalated into shouting, first documented fight between the brothers in 4 months of surveillance. Now they're tearing into each other with zero intervention from me. Greed operates exactly like termites. Once it gains entry, it handles its own demolition. Sometimes the most sophisticated mechanism is the one that winds itself. You simply design the initial conditions correctly, then step back and let physics handle the rest. I scroll to the final line. Ronan has dispatched a private email to Sterling demanding a face-to-face meeting alone, excluding Hayes entirely. Subject line: urgent estate settlement discrepancies requiring immediate resolution. I read that line and tap my finger on the table, 3 times a rhythm I use when a gear in my plan begins to accelerate beyond my initial calculations. Tap, tap, tap. The brothers no longer trust each other. Soon, neither will trust Sterling. And Sterling, believing himself the architect, has no idea his own clients are fracturing from inside. I designed the trap 4 years ago. Baited it with a gift deed and accumulated debt. Set it with surveillance devices and historical designations. Now it's springing itself. I don't need to actively sabotage them anymore. They're sabotaging each other with the natural efficiency of people who were never really allies, just temporary partners, united by greed. Now discovering greed doesn't share well. I close the report and look out at the lake. More open water today than yesterday. More tomorrow than today. Spring approaching, whether anyone wishes it or not. Celeste's question echoes, are you repairing or leaving behind? The answer is both. I'm repairing what Eleanor tried to break: her genuine will, her actual wishes, the truth about what she wanted, versus what they claimed she wanted. And I'm leaving behind the people who broke it: my sons, my former friend, the conspiracy they built thinking I was too old to notice. Both things can be true simultaneously. A clockmaker repairs the mechanism, discards the broken parts, returns the functional whole to service. Repair and discard, restore and release. I tap the table 3 more times, then stand and walk to the window. Outside, Silver Lake continues its slow thaw. Inside, my phone holds evidence of a conspiracy eating itself alive. And somewhere in Boston, Ronan is composing an email that will accelerate everything I've set in motion. By early February, I'll need to place a call to Desmond at the bookstore. My first explicit directive after 4 years of patient waiting. But tonight, I simply stand at the window with Eleanor's photograph beside me, watching darkness fall across the water, and wait for the mechanisms to complete their inevitable rotation. Early February, I placed a call to the man at the bookstore, my first explicit directive after 4 years of patient waiting. The conspiracy is fracturing on its own. Ronan's paranoia doing my work for me. But watching mechanisms turn isn't enough anymore. It's time to retrieve what Eleanor hid. Monday morning, I dial Desmond's number. He answers on the second ring. Russell, I need you to visit the Boston Historical Museum today, I tell him, as legal representative of the Ashford family. A pause. Then, what am I looking for? The grandfather clock I donated in 2019. Request an inspection. Bring a notary public. No questions asked. Just confirmation he understands and will depart within the hour. 2 men who've worked together long enough to trust without explanation. I hang up and make coffee. Stand at the window watching the lake. More open water every day. The thaw continues whether I watch it or not. Desmond calls back 6 hours later. I answer immediately. We have it, he says. His voice carries weight I haven't heard before. And Russell, she knew everything, long before the end. I stand at my Silver Lake window, phone pressed to my ear, staring out at the frozen water that's been thawing for weeks. Tell me, I say. He recounts the mission in detail. He presented authorization documents to the curator, valid legal paperwork, establishing him as designated representative of the Ashford estate. Requested inspection of the antique pendulum clock donated in my wife's name 6 years ago. The curator at Boston Historical Museum unlocked the climate-controlled preservation crate with professional efficiency, unaware they were facilitating the recovery of evidence that will reshape a family's legal future. Desmond examined the 19th-century mechanism. His hands moved with the expertise I taught him to recognize when I first showed him how to identify authentic horological work from reproductions. We spent 3 afternoons in my shop in 2019, just before I left Boston, teaching him what to look for. Behind the clock's dial, in a space only someone intimate with these mechanisms could locate, sat a wax-sealed envelope, Eleanor Ashford's signature across the front in her elegant script. Beside it, notary stamp dated September 14, 2016, 6 weeks before she died. The chain of custody is firmly established, Desmond continues. I possessed valid authorization. The notary witnessed the recovery. The envelope remained sealed until proper legal proceeding. Everything documented exactly as you required. Where are you now? Outside the museum. Winter afternoon, lights fading. I close my eyes. The weight of what he's describing settles in layers. Eleanor co-founded the Boston Historical Museum in 2008, 8 years before her death. And I realize now she was building the infrastructure for this exact moment, knowing someday I would need a place that would preserve that clock forever. She placed the will where only I would find it. In the clock only I would eventually sell. To the museum only she knew would preserve it indefinitely. Trusted me to possess enough patience no matter how many years it required. The envelope, I ask. Sealed, intact. The notary photographed it before I touched it. Complete documentation. Bring it to Silver Lake tomorrow morning. Understood. He hangs up. I set my phone down and stand at the window for a long time. The reality settles slowly like sediment in still water. Eleanor didn't just hide a will. She engineered an entire preservation system. Museum charter. Climate-controlled archives. Legal framework ensuring the clock would never be sold, never be moved, never be accessed without proper authorization. She spent 8 years, from 2008 to 2016, building the machinery that would protect this document until I was ready to retrieve it. Not because she was innocent. The diary makes clear she wasn't. But because she understood what would come after her death. Understood that Sterling would manipulate. That my sons might be swayed. That I would need protection I couldn't ask for while she was alive. So she built it. Piece by piece. Museum founding in 2008. Clock donation in 2019, 3 years after her death. Handled through a state executor she trusted. Every mechanism designed to operate independently, waiting for the moment I would activate it. Trust is not given in a moment. It's built over decades, tested by silence, proven by patience, and ultimately rewarded when someone who died 8 years ago reaches forward through time to place exactly the right tool in exactly the right hands. That night, I sit in my study, with Eleanor's photograph on the desk, her face at 35 before any of this became complicated. I stare at it for a long time. She left me a will dated September 14th, 2016. 6 weeks before ovarian cancer took her at 57. 6 weeks when she knew time was running out and used every remaining day to engineer redemption. The hidden compartment, the museum placement, the legal authorization framework. Everything calculated to reach me eventually through my unique expertise and patience. She knew I would sell that clock when the time came. Knew I would need the money, or need the space, or simply need to let go of something that reminded me too much of her. She knew I would choose the museum she founded because I would want it preserved properly. And she knew that someday, whether next year or 10 years later, I would realize where she hid the truth. Outside the cabin window, the snow has stopped completely. For the first time in weeks, the Silver Lake sky is perfectly clear and thick with stars, the kind of night Eleanor always loved, when you could see the full depth of the universe. I whisper to her photograph in the empty room. You placed it where only I would find it, Maggie. Because you knew I would have enough patience. Tomorrow Desmond will bring the envelope to Silver Lake. Tomorrow I will read what Eleanor wrote in her final weeks. Tomorrow I will discover what she wanted the world to know after she was gone. But tonight, I simply sit with her photograph and the understanding that even in her worst betrayals, she loved me enough to protect what mattered most. The stars shine clear and bright, visible all the way to the horizon. The following day, Desmond brought a notarized copy of Eleanor's true will to Silver Lake. I brewed a pot of tea, laid the envelope on the table, and stared at it for 15 minutes before breaking the seal. I needed to steady myself first. Whatever Eleanor wrote 8 years ago, 6 weeks before dying, would change everything I thought I understood about her final days. The wax seal cracks under my fingers, dark red, aged, fragmenting, like the last physical barrier between Eleanor's intentions and the truth. Inside, her authentic will, professionally typed, notarized, September 14th, 2016. I read it slowly. Every word. The entirety of the Ashford family estate, valued at $2.8 million, bequeathed directly to the New England Orphan Support Fund, operating under the title the Eleanor Ashford Foundation. Not a single dollar for Sterling. Not a penny for Ronan or Hayes. Every asset redirected to help children who lost their parents, just as Eleanor feared her own children had lost their moral compass. The house, the investments, the retirement accounts, the family heirlooms. Everything I thought they were fighting over, everything Sterling was helping them steal. Eleanor gave it all away years before she died. To orphans. To children who needed protection more than her grown sons needed more wealth. I set the will down. Look at the second page. At the bottom, handwritten in Eleanor's failing script from her final weeks, a personal note. The ink is faded but legible. Her handwriting deteriorating, cancer and medication making her grip unsteady. Russell, if you are reading this, it means you have uncovered enough. I am sorry I lacked the courage to say it to your face, but I tried to do what was right at the end. Forgive me if you can. I finish reading the words, lower the paper slowly. Look up at her photograph on the wall, her face at 35 before everything became complicated. 8 years. 8 years I lived not knowing she had left this behind. And for the first time since Eleanor died, for the first time in 8 years, tears spill down my face. I don't sob. Don't shake. Just sit quietly, while salt water tracks down to my jaw and falls onto the paper, blurring the ink slightly where it lands. I wipe my eyes, sit quietly with her photograph for a long moment, and think about all the years I believed she had simply betrayed me and left, when in truth she spent her final 6 weeks alive building this exact bridge back to me across the chasm of death. The tea goes cold on the table. I don't touch it. Wednesday morning, supplementary documentation arrives from Desmond Historical Records he pulled from city archives. Boston Historical Museum lists Eleanor Ashford as co-founding benefactor dating back to 2008, 8 years before her death. She didn't select that museum randomly for me to sell the clock to. She engineered that destination while she was still alive, knowing with absolute certainty I would eventually sell that specific clock to that exact institution because it was the only place she knew would value and preserve it forever. The will wasn't hidden. It was intentionally placed in a location only I could ever trace because only I knew what that clock was worth. She trusted me to find it, no matter how many years it took. I smile despite the tears that haven't fully stopped. You knew I would have enough patience, Maggie, I whisper to her photograph. That afternoon I prepare 2 USB drives, copying files with surgical precision, each targeted to inflict maximum psychological clarity. First drive, Sterling, Hewitt, Boston. Contents, the 47-minute audio recording, specifically the final segment where Sterling speaks alone. His voice muttering to himself in that frozen Beacon Hill house. That old fool raised 2 kids that aren't even his for 32 years. He deserves to lose everything. Included with it, a brief typed note suggesting voluntary cooperation with authorities would be in his best interest. Second drive, Ronan Garrison, New York, with carbon copy to Hayes Garrison, Boston. Contents, the same recording segment where Sterling reveals the paternity truth, plus 2004 blood type records showing biological impossibility of Ronan being my son. And a separate document for Hayes' confirmation that he is in fact my biological child, along with the same medical records proving it. Different evidence, different targets, different psychological impacts, all perfectly legal. all absolutely devastating. Grief and rage can coexist in the same heart. The way winter and spring can share the same week, one melting into the other. Neither fully displaced, both necessary for what comes next. I loved these people. Eleanor for 35 years. My sons for their entire lives. Sterling as a friend for 3 decades. And I will destroy what they've become with the same precision I once used to repair the clocks they broke. I label each drive, seal each in separate envelopes, address them in my careful script. Sterling's envelope thin professional containing only the USB and a single typed page. The son's envelope slightly thicker containing the USB blood records and separate letters to each Hayes's confirming his biological connection. To me Ronan's simply stating facts. He's suspected since receiving my evidence packages in January. Thursday morning I will mail them. The woman at the post office will ask if I want insurance. I'll tell her it's unnecessary. The contents hold no monetary value, only the weight of truth. I set both envelopes on my desk beside Eleanor's photograph. The 3 of us, me, Eleanor, frozen at 35, and the evidence of everything that came after sitting together in the quiet cabin. Outside, the lake continues its thaw. More open water every day. Spring approaching whether anyone wants it or not. Somewhere in Boston, Sterling believes he's maneuvering toward guardianship petition. Ronan and Hayes believe they're managing family complications while fighting each other over hidden assets. None of them understand what arrives in their mailboxes this weekend. None of them know Eleanor left them nothing. None of them realize I've been listening for 4 years, documenting. For 4 years, preparing for this exact moment, when all the mechanisms I built would engage simultaneously. I pick up Eleanor's photograph. Look at her young face, the woman I married, the woman who betrayed me. The woman who spent her final weeks engineering redemption she knew she'd never witness. I forgive you, Maggie, I whisper. Not because you asked, but because you tried to make it right when you knew you were dying. That's more than most people do. I set the photo down carefully. Return to the window overlooking the lake. Tomorrow I walk into the Silver Lake post office carrying 2 envelopes that will detonate everything Sterling, Ronan, and Hayes have built. And then I wait to see which of them breaks first. That Thursday, I walked into the Silver Lake post office for the first time. The woman behind the counter asked if I wanted to purchase parcel insurance, and I told her it wasn't necessary. The envelopes sat in my coat pocket since morning. 2 of them sealed yesterday afternoon, addressed in my precise handwriting. Ready. Thursday arrives cold and clear. I walk the 1/4 mile from cabin to Silver Lake's small post office. The building sits on Main Street next to the hardware store, white clapboard American flag, wooden steps worn smooth by decades of footsteps. The envelopes feel light in my pocket, but carry the weight of 4 years of preparation. 8 years of grief and 32 years of questions finally answered. I walk deliberately, unhurried. There is no longer any reason to rush when every piece has been positioned exactly where it belongs. A small bell jingles when I open the door. The postal clerk looks up, woman in her 50s, friendly smile. The kind of small-town efficiency that makes things work without unnecessary complexity. Morning, she says. Good morning. I hand her both envelopes. Express courier, guaranteed delivery, signature required. She examines the addresses. Boston and New York. First envelope Monday morning before 9 a.m. Boston time. Second envelope Tuesday morning New York with carbon copy Wednesday Boston. She nods, processing the shipping requirements. Types into her computer. Prints labels. Do you want to purchase insurance? She asks. These look important. It's unnecessary, I tell her. The contents hold no monetary value, only the weight of truth. She gives me a look that suggests she's heard stranger things working small-town postal service. Applies the labels, weighs each envelope, calculates postage. $63 total, she says. I hand her cash. She processes the payment stamps, the receipts, hands me tracking numbers, then places both envelopes in the outgoing mail bin behind the counter. Simple motion, irreversible consequence. Truth is the strangest weapon. It requires no embellishment, no exaggeration, no sharpening. You simply present it cleanly and let its own weight do the work gravity was designed for. Have a good day, she says. You as well. I walk back toward the cabin, tracking receipts in my pocket, hands empty. The walk back is quiet. The envelopes are gone. What they contain I have already committed to memory, each detail, each calculation, each intended fracture. There is nothing left to review, only to wait. I reach the cabin and stand at the window overlooking the lake. Run the calculations one final time. Sterling receives his envelope Monday morning, February 10th. Courier arrives around 9 a.m. at his Boston office. Signature required means I'll know exactly when he opens it. Ronan receives his Tuesday, February 11th. New York delivery morning. Hayes receives his carbon copy Wednesday, February 12th. Boston. Then comes the interval. The waiting period, where everything either slides into proper alignment, Sterling cooperates, the brothers fracture, the conspiracy collapses under its own weight, or I pivot to the alternate option. Out on the water, a small cluster of geese argues loudly over something that seems vitally important in the moment, but will be forgotten by sunset. I understand that feeling more than I care to admit. The alternate option sits in a safety deposit box at a New Hampshire bank. Documents I've never shown anyone. Evidence I've never deployed. The nuclear option, as they say, though I prefer to think of it as the fail-safe mechanism built into every complex system. 4 years ago, when I began this, I prepared 3 tiers of escalation. Tier 1, surveillance and documentation, completed. Tier 2, strategic evidence distribution, creating internal fractures, currently deploying. Tier 3, the alternate option, prepared but unused. I've built complex mechanisms for 37 years, designed them to operate reliably, redundantly, with backup systems for every critical function. This is no different. I've never needed to deploy Tier 3, never had to activate the failsafe. The machinery always performs as designed when you build it correctly from the beginning. I don't expect this time to be any different. Sterling will receive his envelope Monday. Understand his exposure, calculate his options, realize cooperation is his best path. Ronan will receive his Tuesday. Discover Sterling is his biological father. Understand his entire identity was built on a lie Sterling helped perpetuate. Hayes will receive his Wednesday. Learn I am his biological father. Understand the conspiracy he joined was designed to defraud the one person who actually shares his blood. 3 envelopes, 3 psychological detonations. 3 days for the conspiracy to collapse from internal contradictions. Then I wait to see which one breaks first and contacts me. Because they will contact me. When people's worlds collapse, they reach for something stable. And despite everything, despite the surveillance, the evidence, the systematic dismantling of their plans, I remain the most stable thing in their lives. The father who raised them. The friend who trusted them. The clockmaker who understands that broken things can sometimes be repaired if you identify the fault and apply the correct fix. Whether I choose to repair them or simply let them break completely depends on what happens next. I stand at the window until the geese settle their dispute and glide toward the opposite shore. Then I make fresh coffee and sit down to wait. Monday morning, February 10th will bring the first response, and everything accelerates from there. Monday morning, 9:15 a.m. 3 states away, a tracking notification. Pings Sterling Hewitt's phone package delivered. The calculations proved accurate. Thursday, I mailed 2 envelopes. Monday morning, the first one arrives exactly as scheduled. I sit at my Silver Lake kitchen table, with my second cup of coffee waiting. I don't need confirmation to know Sterling has received his package. I planned the timing too carefully for it to fail now. Dale's report arrived at 11 that morning, time-stamped and precise the way he always delivered things. According to the office security log, Dale had obtained Sterling's building, showed his badge scan at 9:03 a.m. The courier signature confirmed delivery at 9:18. His assistant logged it as received at 9:21. I don't know exactly what ran through his mind when he tore open that envelope and found only a USB drive inside, no note, no explanation, just the drive. I don't know if his hand trembled when he plugged it in or if he kept the professional composure he'd maintained for 40 years. What I know is this: the audio file runs 47 minutes and 22 seconds. His own voice is on it. Eleanor's voice is on it. Every meeting, every decision, every lie preserved in the recording quality of equipment that cost me $8,000 and 4 years of patience. Dale's final notation read simply, "Subject departed office at 10:04 a.m. Vehicle heading north on I-93. No return. I set the report down and walked to the window. North, toward Silver Lake. He was coming. I had calculated he might. Some men, when they've run out of legal options, stop being lawyers and start being human beings. Sterling had been a lawyer for 40 years. I wondered which version of him would arrive at my door. At my cabin, I stood in the workshop, not touching anything. The tracking notification confirmed delivery at 9:18. Dale's notation said north on I-93 at 10:04. The math was simple, 3 hours give or take. I moved to the kitchen, filled the kettle. At my cabin, I stood in the workshop, not touching anything. The tracking notification confirmed delivery at 9:18. Dale's notation said north on I-93 at 10:04. The math was simple, 3 hours give or take. I moved to the kitchen, filled the kettle, set out 2 coffee mugs on the worn pine table, my usual chipped ceramic, and Eleanor's favorite, the one with the hairline crack she never noticed, but I saw every time I held it. Steam rose from the kettle. Winter light came through the cabin window. I touched the crack with my thumb. Almost invisible unless you know to look. Sterling would know. At 2:15, I heard tires on the gravel road, the unmistakable sound of a city car, moving too carefully on an unpaved surface. I didn't go to the window. I stayed at the kitchen table with my coffee and waited. The door would open when he was ready. And I had been ready for 4 years. Sterling steps across the threshold without invitation, and the door closes behind him with a sound like a vault ceiling. His eyes lock onto Eleanor's mug on the counter, the one with the hairline crack running through her favorite McCarthy quote. The one I set out 2 hours ago. "You got the USB," I say. He nods, still staring at the mug. His cologne, sharp and expensive, cuts through the cabin's wood smoke smell. I watched it. All 47 minutes. I gesture to the kitchen table where 2 mugs wait, steam rising. "Coffee's fresh. Sit." He sits like a man approaching the gallows. I take the chair across from him, the same chair where I've planned this moment for 3 months. "Russell, I need to explain." "Then explain." Silence stretches between us. Outside, a crow calls from the pines. Sterling's jaw works, grinding rehearsed words. "I loved her first," he says finally, voice rough. "Summer of 1983 literature seminar at Cornell. She quoted McCarthy, that same passage on the mug, and I thought I'd never heard anything so perfect." He pauses. "We dated 6 months. I was going to propose. Then Dad had his stroke and I came home to run the firm. When I came back for Christmas, she was with you. The coffee tastes like ash, but I drink it anyway. She never mentioned you dated. I asked her not to. Thought it would be easier." He finally looks at me, eyes heavy with grief. I was wrong. Outside, ice drips from the eaves in slow rhythm. How many conversations happen this way, 2 men at a table, years of silence breaking apart like ice in spring thaw. Except this isn't spring, and nothing here is thawing. This is excavation, archaeology of betrayal. The affair started in 1992. Sterling continues, voice dropping. "Dad was dying. Your practice was taking off. Eleanor and I spent hours together on estate planning. She told me it was a mistake after the first time." He swallows. "But it happened 3 times. June, August, October. The last time was at your lake house. She ended it that night. Said she couldn't." His voice cracks. "She chose you, Russell. Always." I set my mug down carefully. The ceramic clicks against wood. "And Ronan," Sterling's face drains of color. "He's mine. Biologically. Eleanor got pregnant that October. She didn't tell me until after he was born, only because I found the medical records organizing your estate documents in '94. The confession I've waited 28 years to hear lands like old news. Stale. Already known. She begged me never to tell you," Sterling says. "Said it would destroy everything. That you were the father who mattered, who showed up, who loved him. She said biology was just biology, but being a father was a choice you made every day. She was right. I am his father. Biology doesn't change that." I lean back, letting the chair creak. And I've known for 20 years, Sterling. Since October 2005. The words hit him like a physical blow. His mouth opens. No sound comes. I found Eleanor's diary cleaning the attic. The one she kept during the pregnancy. She wrote about you. About her choice, about the guilt. I pause. I never told her I knew. Seemed kinder. 20 years. Barely a whisper. You've known for 20 years. And played my part. Loved my son. Built my practice. Stayed married to my wife. I reach under the table and retrieve the manila folder I placed there this morning. It lands between us with a soft thud. While you built a debt trap to steal our estate. His eyes drop to the folder. The recording proves intent to defraud. The bank records show the debt structure. I have emails, Sterling, voicemails, transaction logs. I tap the folder once. Everything I need to send you to prison. Russell, but I'm not going to. Because Eleanor wouldn't want that. And because I need your cooperation. I open the folder. Inside 3 pages of terms, full financial transparency, cooperation with debt restructuring. Lake House title. Transfer back to family trust, resignation. From Garrison Consolidated's board trust fund for Ronan structured to prevent interference. Sign it, I say, or I release everything to the DA tomorrow. His hand trembles as he picks up the pen. For a moment I think he'll refuse. Then the pen touches paper and his signature flows across the line. The same signature that's been on my life insurance policies for 40 years. He stands without a word, walks to the door. Pauses with his hand on the knob. Does Ronan know? He asks quietly. No, and he never will, not from me. Sterling nods once, then steps into the February cold. The door closes. An engine starts, tires crunch over frozen gravel, then silence returns like water filling a hole. I sit alone at the table listening to ice melt. Eventually I stand and walk to the mantel where Eleanor's photo waits in its silver frame. Her smile frozen in a moment before any of this began. I touch the glass gently, my fingers leaving prints that catch the light. I know Maggie, I whisper to her frozen smile. I know. The nickname hangs in the air like smoke, carrying weight I haven't spoken aloud in 3 decades. Outside, the sun drops behind the pines and shadows fill the cabin like rising water. The notary office clock reads 9:58 a.m. on Valentine's Day, when Sterling arrives 2 minutes early carrying nothing but his reputation in a briefcase he won't open. The irony of the date hangs unspoken, sealing the betrayal of a love triangle 35 years old on the holiday celebrating devotion. I'm already seated when he enters, my attorney beside me. Marcus Aldridge is 54, silver-haired, handles estate litigation with clinical precision that borders on surgical. He chose this notary office, deliberately neutral ground, an hour from Boston Public Record, but discreet. Sterling wears an immaculate gray suit, charcoal tie, shoes polished to mirrors. He looks like a man preparing for court. In a way he is. Mr. Hewitt, Marcus says, standing. Thank you for your punctuality. I gave my word on Friday. Sterling replies, setting his briefcase on the table without opening it. I keep my word. The notary public arrives 3 minutes later. Linda Kowalski, early 40s, carries the quiet authority of someone who's witnessed 1,000 signatures that changed lives. She introduces herself, checks identifications from all parties, arranges her embosser and stamp pad with practiced efficiency. The office smells of leather and old coffee, institutional and impersonal. I'll need to see identification from all parties, Linda says. We comply. Driver's licenses laid on the table like cards in a game nobody wins. Marcus opens his folder, removes the affidavit, 3 pages, single-spaced, every clause negotiated over 72 hours of phone calls and revisions. Sterling doesn't ask to review it first. He reviewed the draft. Tuesday suggested 2-word changes, accepted the rest. I waive the reading, Sterling says. I'm familiar with the content. Protocol requires it. Marcus replies, tone neutral. He begins. The words fill the small conference room like smoke. Sterling Hewitt, being duly sworn, attests that Eleanor Garrison's February 2016 last will and testament represents her authentic testamentary intent. That the December 2020 document does not. That he participated in estate planning activities with full knowledge of legal and ethical violations. Dates follow: June 2020, August 2020, October 2020. Each month strips another layer from Sterling's 40-year career. Marcus reads without inflection, a surgeon reciting procedure. Sterling sits motionless, hands folded on the table. I watch his face for cracks, find none. Whatever broke in him at the cabin has been carefully reconstructed into professional composure. Do hereby attest that the February 2016 last will and testament represents Mrs. Eleanor Garrison's genuine testamentary intent. Marcus reads, and that the December 2020 document does not. The notary's seal crunches down. Permanent. Sterling Hewitt, attorney at law, just swore under oath that he helped his client commit fraud. Linda administers the oath. Raise your right hand. Do you swear this testimony is true and accurate? I do, Sterling says. The same words he spoke at his wedding 41 years ago. Different vow. Same finality. He signs without hesitation. 3 initials on margins, full signature on the final page. His handwriting hasn't changed since he witnessed Eleanor's first will in 1998. The same careful loops, the same confident pressure. Linda applies her seal, the embosser making, that distinctive crunch that turns paper into record. Sealed this 14th day of February 2025. She says, writing the date in careful print. Business concluded in 14 minutes. Marcus departs first, carrying the sealed documents in his briefcase like classified intelligence. Sterling and I walk to the parking lot together, February sun bright and cold against our faces. Our cars parked 3 spaces apart, a gap neither of us acknowledges. Sterling stops at his sedan, doesn't unlock it. The parking lot is empty except for us and Linda's Subaru. Wind carries the smell of exhaust from Route 93, traffic humming in the distance. Do you ever consider forgiveness, Russell? He asks quietly. The question hangs in cold air between us. Forgiveness. What does forgiveness look like when the crime took 30 years and the victim is dead? When the son who calls me dad carries another man's DNA and the brother who played protector built a debt trap to steal what remained? I take a long moment before responding, choosing words with clockmaker's precision. I am doing what is right, I say finally. Not what is easy. Those two concepts do not always align. Sterling nods slowly, no argument left in him. I understand. I know you do. We shake hands, first physical contact in years, formal and brief. His grip is firm, professional, carrying no weight beyond acknowledgement. He gets into his sedan, starts the engine, drives away without looking back. I watch until the car disappears around the corner, then get into my truck. The drive toward Silver Lake takes 40 minutes. Route 93. South O. Berto? Lining the highway mountains, distant and white against blue sky. I think of the 2 envelopes I mailed last Tuesday, one to Ronan's apartment in New York, one to Hayes's house in Portsmouth. Identical contents. Copies of everything. The 2016 will. The 2020 forgery. Bank records showing the debt structure. The 47-minute recording. Sterling's signed affidavit from this morning. I had Marcus prepare 2 originals, kept the second. No letter, no explanation. Just evidence. I sent them before Sterling signed today, before I secured his cooperation, before any of this became irrevocable. While Sterling thought he still had leverage, I was already triggering the next phase. They should arrive today. Maybe tomorrow. Ronan checks his mail, religiously always has, even in college. Hayes less so, but his wife will see the return address, recognize my handwriting, set it aside where he'll find it. 2 sons. 2 envelopes. Proof their mother committed fraud. Proof the estate was built on conspiracy. Proof, though they won't understand this part yet, that Ronan and I share no blood. I wonder which one will dial the other first. 3 days after the envelopes arrived, my phone rings at 2:17 p.m., Ronan's name on the screen. The silence is over. I answer on the second ring. "Hello, Ronan?" His voice comes through hollow-controlled like a man assembling puzzle pieces in the dark. He doesn't say hello. Doesn't ease in. "How long have you known?" I set my coffee mug on the cabin's kitchen counter, the ceramic cool against my palm. Outside the window, Silver Lake stretches gray and still under February clouds. "Known what specifically?" "How long?" No deflection. No softening. He's earned directness, if nothing else. "Since 2004, you were 12 years old." The silence on the line is massive breathing space for words that won't come. I can hear him trying to form them, starting and stopping like an engine that won't catch. 20 years, he says finally. Not a question, a calculation. "Yes. How did you—" "Blood panel for your sports physical. You needed it for the travel soccer team. Type mismatch made biological paternity impossible." Another silence. This one longer, heavier. I picture him in his New York apartment, phone pressed to his ear, staring at something without seeing it. The same expression he wore at 16 when Eleanor told him his grandfather had died. "And you still—" He stops, starts again. "You still raised me." "Still what?" My voice is steady as mathematics. "What did you expect me to do? Ronan cast you out. You were a 12-year-old boy, my son. Biology doesn't change that." "I don't—" His breath catches. "I don't know how to feel about this. 20 years. I raised a son I knew wasn't mine, while that son's biological father helped the boy's mother steal my estate. While Eleanor kept her secret, and I kept mine, both of us choosing silence over truth, protection over honesty. 2 decades of careful performance, and for what? So we could arrive here at this phone call, with everything exposed and nothing resolved. You don't have to figure that out today, I say. But understand what you Hayes and Sterling engineered. I hold complete legal proof. It will move through the system regardless of cooperation. I need to think. The line goes dead. I set the phone on this counter beside my coffee. The mug has gone cold, bitter taste lingering on my tongue. Outside, a crow lands on the dock, black against gray water. 17 seconds pass. The phone rings again. "Hayes," I answer. "Dad, I am so sorry." His voice cracks immediately, words tumbling over each other. "I am so sorry." "Tell me what you're sorry for, Hayes. All of it. The guardianship, the will, everything." He's crying now, trying to control it and failing. "I knew it was wrong. I knew from the beginning. You were afraid of Ronan." Not a question. A statement. The pause that follows confirms what I've suspected for years. "Yes," he whispers finally. "Why?" "Because—" He stops, swallows. "Because Mom always chose him. Always. I was the afterthought, the backup. And when she got sick, when she needed someone to handle things, she still chose him. Made him executor. Gave him power of attorney. Like I didn't even exist." The smell of wood smoke drifts through the cabin from the fireplace, mixing with the coffee's bitterness. I've known this wound existed in Hayes for decades, watched Eleanor unknowingly deepen it, with every preference, every comparison. Watched him build resentment like compound interest year after year. Fear is insufficient justification for doing wrong, Hayes. I know. His voice breaks completely. I know that now. But Dad, what does "I'm sorry" actually mean when you've already cashed the checks? The question hangs between us. Hayes goes silent. No answer exists that doesn't condemn him. "You are my biological son," I say finally. That fact does not change. But what you executed also does not change. Those two truths coexist. "What happens next?" he asks quietly. "What is right, as I always have." I hear him crying on the other end, trying to muffle it. 28 years old, successful architect, devoted husband, and still my son, broken and flawed and mine. "I love you, Dad." "I know you do, Hayes. That was never in question." The line goes dead. I set the phone down again, watch it like it might explode. The cabin settles around me in silence, just wind against windows. The fires crackle my own breathing. The phone buzzes. Not a call. A text. Dale Vickers, the private investigator I hired 3 weeks ago, the one who's been monitoring communications since I mailed those envelopes. His messages come encrypted, brief, professional. I hired him. 42, former FBI, runs a discreet investigation firm out of Manchester. He doesn't ask why I need surveillance, just delivers data. The message reads, target called Sterling Hewitt, 2:49 p.m., duration 11 minutes 22 seconds, recording uploading. I stare at the screen. Ronan hung up with me at 2:27. 22 minutes to decide his next move, and that move was Sterling. Not Hayes, not a lawyer. His biological father. The recording won't reach me until tomorrow. Dale's encryption and upload protocols take time. But I don't need to hear the words to know the shape of the conversation. Ronan is frightened. Sterling is calculating. They're coordinating. I set the phone face down on the counter and walk to the window. The Crow is still on the dock, watching the water with the patience of something that understands waiting. Silver Lake reflects clouds like a mirror, showing the sky back to itself. The exact details won't reach me until tomorrow, but I know it won't be peaceful. The email arrives Thursday morning at 6:47 a.m. Subject line, formal withdrawal of counsel. Sterling severing ties before I can cut them. I read it standing at the cabin window, coffee going cold in my hand. Morning light slants across Silver Lake, turning the water silver gold. The email is brief, formal, stripped of everything but legal necessity. Effective immediately, I withdraw as counsel for Ronan and Hayes Garrison. Conflict of interest precludes further representation. Do not contact me regarding this matter. My cooperation with your attorney stands independent of this withdrawal. Signed with his full credentials, Sterling J. Hewitt, Esquire, 43 years, Massachusetts Bar. 1 day before our scheduled Concord meeting. He's ending this on his own terms, preserving what dignity remains. Smart. Expected. It changes nothing except the timeline. Dale Vickers calls an hour later. I answer on the first ring. Sterling's cutting them loose, Dale says without preamble. Smart move, gets ahead of the collapse. Or he's simply doing what attorneys do when the client becomes the liability. Ronan's panicking. Tried calling Sterling 17 times yesterday. No answer. His office confirmed the withdrawal afternoon of the 12th wouldn't give reason. Just effective immediately. I take a sip of coffee. It tastes like ash and old grounds, bitter on my tongue. What's Ronan's next move? Already made it. Dale's voice carries the satisfaction of someone watching dominoes fall. Retained a Manhattan litigation attorney, Jonathan Pierce, makes his living suing other lawyers. Filed malpractice complaint against Sterling yesterday afternoon. Same day as the withdrawal. Claiming what? Negligent advice regarding the guardianship and will. Says Sterling failed to warn him of legal risks, gave improper counsel, breached fiduciary duty. Dale pauses. Your son just sued his co-conspirator. Former conspirator, I correct. Now witness. He's trying to shift blame. Won't work, but it's the last card he's got. I watch a pair of crows land on the dock, black shapes against morning light. What about discovery? That's the beautiful part. Dale's tone shifts to something approaching admiration. Pierce filed discovery demands with the complaint. Requested all communications between Sterling and Ronan regarding estate planning. All advice memoranda. All recordings. Including mine. Including yours. Ronan submitted a copy trying to prove Sterling gave him bad advice. Dale lets that hang. Didn't realize the tape also contains his and Hayes' voices planning the fraud in detail. Discovery rules mean it goes to Sterling's defense attorney, who has mandatory duty to report evidence of ongoing crimes. I engineered the perfect clock, each gear turning another momentum building until the mechanism runs itself and the maker can simply watch. Sterling's withdrawal spins Ronan into panic. Panic drives lawsuit. Lawsuit triggers discovery. Discovery delivers evidence to officers of the court, who must act. Sometimes you don't add momentum, I say quietly. You let things collapse under their own weight. FBI is going to get this from 2 sources now, Dale confirms. Yours and Sterling's attorney. Corroboration without coordination. When? Soon. Monday arrives with February cold and clear skies. Marcus Aldridge calls at 9:14 a.m. Filed at opening, he says. Clerk's face when she saw the exhibit count. How many? 47 exhibits. 312 pages. Eleanor's genuine will from 2016. The forged 2020 version. Sterling's notarized affidavit. Surveillance recordings. Complete chain of custody for everything. I close my eyes, feeling the weight lift. And the FBI. Couriers delivering identical package to Boston field office right now. Dale calls 2 hours later. FBI received your package at 9:47 a.m. Sterling's attorney delivered his at 11:15. Same recording, different chain of custody. 2 independent sources on the same day. Sterling's attorney filed the fraud report. Had no choice. Officer of the court fraud evident on tape. Filed mandatory report at 10:30 this morning. Dale pauses. FBI loves this. 2 sources. Same evidence, different motivations. 2 sources. Same tape. FBI Special Agent Catherine Morris opens both files within 6 minutes of each other, sees the corroboration, picks up the phone. When my phone rings at 4 p.m., the number shows Boston area code but no name. Russell Garrison, I answer. Mr. Garrison, this is Special Agent Catherine Morris, FBI Boston Field Office. Her voice is professional, measured, carries the weight of federal authority. I'm calling to inform you that the Bureau is launching a formal investigation into federal crimes involving your late wife's estate. All 3 individuals, Ronan Garrison Hayes, Garrison and Sterling Hewitt, wire fraud conspiracy to commit fraud abuse of guardianship process. Yes, sir. She pauses. We appreciate your cooperation in this matter. An agent will contact you within 48 hours to schedule a formal interview. I understand. Thank you, Mr. Garrison. The line goes dead. I set the phone on the kitchen table and stare at it. Federal investigation. 3 targets. Point of no return. The phone buzzes 17 minutes later. Text from Dale. It's over, Russell. You're part of the gears clear. I sit with that. Years of waiting, months of planning, weeks of execution released. The machinery engages without me now. FBI agents will interview witnesses, subpoena records, build cases. Prosecutors will make charging decisions. The system moves forward on its own momentum. The cabin smells like wood smoke and coffee, familiar and empty. Outside, the sun drops behind the pines, painting the lake orange and gold. 6:03 p.m. The phone buzzes again. Unknown number. Text message. Dad, can we talk, please? No capitalization games. No careful punctuation. No manipulation I can detect. Just 3 sentences from an unmapped number that can only be Ronan. First time he's texted Dad without an agenda. I stare at the screen until it goes dark, then lights again when another message doesn't arrive. Just those 3 sentences hanging in digital space waiting for response. The FBI has his name. The clock is running, and my son is asking for help. 9 months later. Marcus Aldridge's call came through on a Thursday when the lake had fully thawed late autumn, the kind of afternoon that feels like the world exhaling. I was walking the shoreline path when the phone rang, boots crunching the last of the fallen leaves. Russell, we won. His voice carried the satisfaction of a craftsman admiring finished work. Court validated the 2016 will. The 2020 document is void. I kept walking, phone pressed to my ear. The lake stretched deep blue beside me, reflecting the October sky. All of it, every provision. Eleanor's intentions are now legally binding. Papers rustled on his end. Judge cited Sterling's affidavit, forensic handwriting analysis, original notary testimony. Called the 2020 will a transparent attempt at posthumous fraud. Direct quote. The air smells like fallen leaves and pine autumn settling into its final weeks. And the disposition, the entire Ashford estate, full amount ordered transferred to the Eleanor Ashford Foundation for historical preservation, work as the 2016 will specified. Marcus pauses. The Beacon Hill house was liquidated at court auction. Tax liens consumed most of it. Remaining balance goes to Boston Historical Preservation Trust. As it should. You fought for years to give away $2.8 million. Marcus's tone shifts toward something like wonder. Most unusual case I've handled, Russell. I stop walking. Look at the lake. Water completely thawed, 30 years of ice breaking all at once. Deep blue mirroring the sky, no distinction between surface and reflection. The same lake Eleanor and I visited 40 years ago, before Sterling, before secrets, before everything froze. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. You're welcome. I'll courier the final documents tomorrow. The line goes dead. I stand there 17 seconds, then resume walking to finish my final mile around Silver Lake. Next morning, 7:15 a.m. My phone buzzes while I'm brewing coffee at the cabin. Dale Vickers. They just entered Sterling's office. FBI. 3 agents. I set my mug on the windowsill, watch steam rise against cold glass. No rush. Just waiting. Another text. Stand by. The coffee tastes dark and strong, bitter on my tongue. I drink it slowly, watching condensation form where steam meets glass. Outside the lake lies still as a mirror. 8:03 a.m. Phone buzzes. Secure. Sterling in custody. Wire fraud, guardianship, fraud, forgery. Looking at up to 15 years. He didn't resist. Just asked for his attorney. I read it twice. Feel no surge of triumph, just weight lifting away like setting down a clock after years of holding it. Sterling will face what he built. The system engages without me now. 10:47 a.m. Ronan served federal summons in New York. Conspiracy to commit fraud. I set the phone on the counter. Pick it up. Read it again. 11:23 a.m. Hayes served Boston. Same charge. Conspiracy. Both facing up to 10 years if convicted. Both sons served federal summons within 36 minutes of each other, and I feel like a man who's just amputated his own limbs to survive. They're alive. They'll face consequences. But the cutting, the precision required to separate what was diseased from what might heal leaves phantom pain where connection used to be. Ronan's text from 2 weeks ago sits in my phone unanswered. Dad, can we talk? Please. 3 sentences I haven't responded to because I don't know what kind of father speaks to his son between summons and sentencing. What words exist in that space? I extract the pocket watch from my vest pocket. Silver case worn smooth from 40 years of handling, engraved with Eleanor's father's initials, W.A., for William Ashford. I click it open. The photo inside the lid shows Eleanor at 24, taken in 1987, before everything. Before Sterling's affair. Before Ronan. Before the secrets that would calcify into betrayal. Do you see Maggie? I whisper to her frozen smile. No answer. Never is. The photo just stares back, unchanging and unknowing, trapped in a moment when we were simply young and the future seemed like something we could build together instead of survive. I click the watch shut. Stand. Walk to the bedroom. The suitcase pulls from the closet with familiar weight, same one I brought to Silver Lake 3 months ago, thinking I'd stay a week. That week became 90 days of planning, waiting, executing. Now it's time to leave. I pack methodically. Clothes folded in precise stacks. Toiletries in sealed bags. The pocket watch wrapped in blue velvet nestled between sweaters. Eleanor's diary. The one I found in 2005 goes in last leather cover, worn soft from reading. Everything fits. Everything accounted for. 4 p.m. Phone buzzes. Dale Vickers. It's over, Russell. Your part of the gear is clear. I stand over the half-packed suitcase, phone in hand, reading those words until the screen goes dark. My part of the gear. The machinery I designed, assembled, and set in motion now running without me. Sterling in custody. Sons served federal summons. Estate transferred to Eleanor's foundation. The genuine will honored over the fraud. Justice, if that word means anything. But standing here in the cabin's bedroom, afternoon light slanting through windows, suitcase half-packed on the bed, I don't feel victorious. Just finished. Like a clockmaker who's spent years repairing a mechanism so damaged it can't tell time again, only prove it once could. Tomorrow morning I head to Logan Airport. Destination uncertain. Work complete. I add the last items to the suitcase, Eleanor's photo from the mantel. In its silver frame, the blue towel I've folded and unfolded 100 times, a book of McCarthy's I've been trying to finish since December. Zip it closed. Set it by the door. The cabin falls quiet around me, just wind against windows, the refrigerator's hum, my own breathing. Outside, the sun drops behind the pines, painting Silver Lake orange and gold. The water that was frozen solid when I arrived now reflects the sky, like it's trying to show me something I'm not ready to see. I walk to the window, press my palm against the glass. Cold seeps through, familiar and final. Tomorrow I leave. Tonight, I watch the lake turn dark. I round the final bend of my lake walk and see Ronan's car at the gate, city sedan, coated in road salt, engine still ticking warm. He leans against the driver's door, hollowed. Unshaven, deep shadows carved under his eyes, wearing an inadequate city coat against New Hampshire cold. He doesn't speak when I approach. No apology, no preamble. How long have you been waiting? I ask. Hour, maybe more. His voice is rough, unused. I wasn't sure you'd see me. I gesture toward the cabin. Come inside. You're underdressed for this weather. He follows without argument. The kitchen smells like coffee and wood smoke. I pour 2 mugs, same ones Sterling drank from, same ones Hayes will use later. Ronan sits at the table without being told, hands wrapped around ceramic for warmth. You were 12 years old, I say, sitting across from him. No easing in, just the fact. A B negative doesn't come from 2 O positive parents. Blood panel for your sports physical. The doctor called with results, mentioned the mismatch, casually assumed I knew adoption details. Ronan's coffee sits untouched, steam rising between us. And you decided... He stops, starts again. What? That you were still my son. Biology had no vote. The words land in silence. Outside, wind moves through pines, a sound like water over stones. Ronan stares at his mug, not drinking. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were 12 and I was the adult. Adults protect children, Ronan, not the other way around. That responsibility doesn't reverse. Even after His voice cracks. After everything we did, I take a sip of coffee. Bitter and strong, the taste coating my tongue. Even then, did you ever hate me? The question I knew was coming. I consider it, carefully choosing words with clockmaker's precision. No. I set my mug down. I was disappointed. That is far worse. He looks up, finally meeting my eyes. Hate is simple, I continue. Clean. Disappointment is grief for what someone could have been. I chose you, Ronan. When the blood results came, when I learned the truth, I chose to raise you anyway. And you chose to betray that. I've been carrying it for 20 years, watching a son I chose to raise betray the man who chose him. Watching him become not evil, just small. Watching potential calcify into greed. Ronan's hands shake around the mug. What happens next? Consequences come. I cannot shield you from them. I lean forward slightly. But begin by telling absolute truth to your defense counsel. Everything. Sterling's advice, your mother's plan, your own choices. Truth is the only foundation that holds weight. He nods slowly. Stands. Walks to the door without finishing his coffee. Thank you, he says quietly, hand on the knob. For seeing me. You're still my son, Ronan. That never changed. The door closes. His engine starts, tires crunch gravel, then silence returns like water filling a hole. 2 hours later, 6:47 p.m., headlights on gravel again. Hayes this time. He enters and breaks down immediately. Not theatrical. Genuine shoulders, shaking face in his hands, trying to breathe through sobs that won't stop. Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I stop him with a raised hand. Sit. He sits. I pour coffee, 3rd time today. Same ritual, same table. The mug warms my palm, familiar weight and heat. You are my biological child, I say. I am aware. I have known since the day you were born. That fact does not erase your actions. But I want you to hold this as certainty. I never doubted you were mine. Hayes flinches at the certainty, like it's a blow he didn't see coming. Why tell me now, he whispers. Because you need to stand on absolute truth before I say what comes next. I pause, let him process. I love you. That does not alter. But love does not mean absence of consequences. 2 sons, 2 conversations, same kitchen table, me dispensing truth like a clockmaker, calibrating gears, precise and irreversible. Each word measured, each silence deliberate. This is what I've built toward the final adjustments before the mechanism runs without me. Do you regret this? Hayes asks. Everything you've done. I consider the question. Outside the lake lies dark under late winter stars, ice breaking apart in patches, water moving beneath. I regret not stopping it sooner, I say finally. I waited too long, gathered evidence when I should have confronted. But I do not regret what is unfolding now. What you and Ronan executed was wrong. What I am executing is necessary. Will you ever forgive us? I don't know. The most honest answer I have. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a process. Right now I'm focused on what's right, not what's comfortable. Hayes nods, wiping his face with his sleeve. He looks young, not 28, but 12, the age when children still believe their fathers can fix anything. I'm sorry, Dad, for all of it. I know you are. That doesn't change what happens next, but I believe you. He stands, walks to the door, pauses. Where will you go after all this? I don't know yet. Will you let me know when you figure it out? Yes. He leaves at 7:23 p.m. I don't turn the lights on. Just sit in the dark kitchen watching where his taillights disappeared into the trees. The cabin settles around me, wood creaking, as temperature drops, refrigerator humming, the pocket watch ticking in my vest pocket. I stay there long after he's gone. 30 minutes, an hour, more. Outside the lake, water moves under breaking ice, making sounds like whispers or breath. The air smells like thawing earth and pine, winter giving way to something else. Both sons came. Both heard truth. Both left carrying weight they'll spend years learning to balance. And I sit alone in darkness, surrounded by silence and the ticking watch, and the cost of being right. For the first time in 8 years, I am the one carrying coffee, 2 mugs, crossing frost-bright grass to Celeste Langley's porch at 6:47 a.m. The morning air bites cold and clean, smelling like pine and fallen leaves. October in New Hampshire has its own particular silence, the kind that feels earned rather than empty. I knock with my elbow hands full. Celeste opens the door, sees the mugs, and her expression shifts, not surprise but understanding. Recognition of something completing its arc. She has spent 3 decades reading rooms full of children who didn't want to be read. She reads me in less than a second. You're leaving today, she says. This afternoon, Florence, one-way ticket. She smiles, gestures to the porch chairs. Good. We sit in silence, watching Silver Lake catch morning light. The water has thawed, completely deep blue, reflecting the October sky. Steam rises from both mugs, curling in the cold air. The coffee tastes strong and dark, familiar ritual, transformed by reversal. 9 months ago, she brought soup to my door because I was a stranger who looked like he might not eat. Today I bring coffee because she is the reason I learned to stop moving long enough to think clearly. Any regrets? Celeste asks quietly. I consider the question the way I consider all questions, measuring it for precision before answering. I regret waiting so long, I say finally. Not waiting for the legal outcome that took the time it took, but waiting until I found courage to simply stop running. You did stop, though, because someone brought soup to my door on day 1. I look at her. Someone who didn't ask questions, just showed up. Celeste waves the gratitude away, but her eyes are bright. That's what neighbors do. No, that's what good people do. Most neighbors would have stayed away. She sips her coffee, says nothing, knows I'm right. We finish our mugs, watching the sun climb higher, turning the lake from blue to gold. A pair of geese land on the water, skidding to a stop with wings spread wide. Life continuing, indifferent to human drama. The geese don't know that a man sitting 10 feet away spent 9 months dismantling a conspiracy while learning to sleep through the night again. They simply land and paddle and exist, which is perhaps the most honest instruction anyone has given me in years. Celeste stands, pulls me into a brief hug. Not theatrical, just solid, real. The kind of embrace that says, I see you, and you're going to be fine without needing either sentence spoken aloud. Send me a postcard, she says. Real mail, not email. I will. Russell, you did the right thing. I nod. Walk back across the frost grass, carrying both empty mugs, hers and mine. At 8:15 a.m. I drive to Silver Lake Bookstore. Desmond has coffee waiting at the counter, knew I would come. He has always known, which is one of the qualities that made him worth trusting, with the parts of this plan that required someone who read people the way he read books, completely without judgment, and with total retention. I had a feeling you'd stop by, he says, sliding the mug across worn wood. Couldn't leave without settling my tab. Your money's no good here. Never was. He gestures to the history section. Besides, you already paid. 9 months of decent conversation is worth more than whatever you owe in coffee. We drink standing in the aisle between shelves, surrounded by books I've read, and books I'll never get to. The smell of old paper and leather bindings, coffee and wood polish. This place became sanctuary without me noticing the transition. I came here in December looking for horology texts and a cover for an envelope exchange. I leave it in October having found something I didn't know I was looking for, the particular comfort of a man who asks nothing of you except that you mean what you say. Where in Florence? Desmond asks. Haven't decided. Figured I'd land first, sort it out from there. That's not like you. No, I agree, it's not. He looks at me carefully, the way he looks at a first edition. He's deciding whether to trust. Then he nods once, satisfied by whatever he sees. 2 men, coffee cups, a bookstore history section. This is what real family looks like when the blood one breaks. Not dramatic, not declared, just showing up, pouring coffee, knowing when to speak, and when silence serves better. Desmond Whitaker never asked me why I needed the surveillance photographs delivered through a bookstore in a town I'd never visited. He simply ensured they arrived clean, documented, and deniable. Some forms of loyalty don't require explanation. They only require that both parties understand the stakes and choose to show up anyway. We shake hands, firm grip, brief carrying weight that doesn't need explanation. 2 men who worked a long and careful operation long enough to trust each other implicitly, now releasing that trust back into the ordinary world where it can rest. Take care of yourself, Russell. You too, Desmond. I return to the cabin at 9:30 a.m. Walk through empty rooms one final time. The kitchen table where Sterling sat across from me on a February afternoon and signed 3 pages of terms with a trembling hand. The same table where Ronan wrapped both hands around a coffee mug and heard me say the words I'd been carrying for 20 years. Where Hayes broke down completely, and I sat with him in the dark afterward, because some silences require company, even when no words exist to fill them. Workshop untouched tools arranged with precision I'll never use again in this particular place. The jeweler's loop on its hook. The small screwdrivers in descending order of size. The brass polish that still smells like the Beacon Hill shop on a Saturday morning when the light came through the front window at exactly the right angle and everything felt briefly like it might be permanent. Bedroom stripped to bare mattress. I lock the door, leave the key under the 3rd stone from the left for the realtor. Don't look back. The truck starts on the first turn, engine steady and reliable. I've arranged for Dale Vickers to collect it next week and donate it wherever he sees fit. Dale, who spent 9 months delivering encrypted reports with the precise efficiency of a man who takes professional pride in being invisible, deserves the small satisfaction of deciding what happens to a truck. It's a poor reward for his work, but he didn't do the work for reward. 2-hour drive to Logan Airport. Traffic light, which is either luck or October on a Thursday. I park in the long-term lot without checking the rate. Some things stop mattering at a certain point in a day. Terminal check-in is efficient. Security line short. Gate B32, Florence departure, 3:45 p.m. I find a seat near the window with 40 minutes before boarding and watch the ordinary machinery of people going somewhere. Families with children dragging wheeled bags, the children urgent about nothing and everything simultaneously. Business people typing on laptops with the focused expression of people who believe the email they're writing is the most important email currently being written on Earth. Couples holding hands heading toward vacation or new life, or the particular renewal that distance from routine provides. Lives in motion, unaware of the man watching them catalog the varieties of forward momentum. The airport smells like coffee and recycled air. It sounds like announcements echoing off hard floors, wheels on tile, 1,000 conversations dissolving into white noise that carries no meaning but fills the silence effectively. I have not been in an airport in 9 months. The last time I stood in a terminal, I was arriving, not departing. I was a man carrying 3 boxes of possessions and a plan I'd spent 4 years building, and nowhere particular to put either one except a cabin 2 hours north of the city I'd just left. Now I am a man with a single carry-on bag and a one-way ticket, and the strange lightness that comes when you've finished something that required everything you had. 3:20 p.m. My phone buzzes. Hayes. Dad, I'm so sorry. I know it isn't enough. I read it. Pause 10 seconds. Type nothing. Hayes sent this message knowing I might not respond. He sent it anyway, which is more than he would have done 6 months ago. Whether that represents growth or simply the natural settling of guilt into something more manageable, I cannot say with certainty. What I can say is that I read every word and let each one land where it was meant to land, and then I set the phone down on my knee and looked out the window at the tarmac, where a ground crew was loading luggage into the belly of my plane with methodical efficiency. Hayes's text arrives 24 minutes before boarding, and I give it exactly 10 seconds, not cruel, just proportional, not ignoring, just choosing. I see the apology. I acknowledge it. I release it. The difference between acknowledging something and carrying it is the difference between a man who has processed grief and a man still drowning in it. I have been drowning for 8 years. I am finished with that particular form of exercise. I power the phone down completely. The screen goes black. Silence where connection used to be. Group 2, you may now board, the gate agent announces. I stand, walk to the line, hand my boarding pass to the scanner. It beeps green. The jet bridge stretches ahead, sloping upward toward the plane. The particular non-place of a jet bridge, neither terminal nor aircraft, neither here nor there, a threshold that exists only in the moment of crossing. I have spent 9 months in various forms of threshold. This one at least has a clear direction. Mid-stride, I pull this pocket watch from my vest pocket. Silver case worn smooth from 40 years of handling, warm from being carried against my heart since the morning I left Beacon Hill. I click it open. Eleanor's photo stares back, 35 years old, taken in 1990, hair pulled back, smile genuine and bright. Before Sterling. Before secrets. Before the diary and the torn page and the 5 words hidden in a clock she spent 8 years placing exactly where I would eventually find them. Just Eleanor frozen in a moment, when everything still seemed possible and neither of us yet knew what the other was quietly carrying. I forgave her in a cabin in February, speaking to a photograph while snow fell outside. The forgiveness didn't arrive all at once. It came the way most true things come, slowly, then completely, like ice giving way to water, when the temperature finally shifts past the point of resistance. She spent her last 6 weeks alive building me a bridge back to the truth she hadn't been brave enough to speak. That is not the act of a woman who stopped caring. That is the act of a woman who ran out of time before she ran out of love. Let's go, Maggie, I say aloud. Not loud enough for anyone else to hear. Just loud enough for her. Finally, I click the watch shut, drop it back into my vest pocket, step onto the plane at exactly 3:44 p.m., 1 minute early. The flight attendant smiles, gestures toward the cabin. I find my seat, 17A window, and settle in. The seat is narrow, and the window shows nothing yet but tarmac and gray October sky. It is enough. Outside, baggage handlers move with practiced efficiency, Ground crew signals departure. The plane's engines hum to life vibration, traveling through metal and seat, and into the bones of a 60-year-old clockmaker who spent 8 years measuring his grief and 4 years converting it into something that could be used. After 8 years of grief transformed into precision, after months of planning transformed into justice, after conversations transformed into consequence, after all of it, I choose forward motion. Not because the past is resolved in any clean or permanent sense. Ronan and Hayes will spend the next several years navigating federal proceedings that will cost them more than money. Sterling will answer for 40 years of careful betrayal in ways that will outlast his career and possibly his freedom. Eleanor's foundation will receive $2.8 million and distribute it to children who lost their parents, which is either irony or grace depending on how you choose to read it. None of that is finished. None of it will ever be entirely finished. Justice is not a destination. It is a direction. The plane pushes back from the gate, turns toward the runway, accelerates down a length of concrete that ends in open sky. The city falls away below Boston in October, the harbor catching afternoon light, the neighborhood of Beacon Hill visible for exactly 1 second as a cluster of brick and narrow streets before the clouds take it. I don't watch it disappear. I'm already looking forward. Lifts, and 8 years of holding my breath finally releases. And to you listening to my story, remember this. Justice and peace are not the same thing. Looking back now from Florence, I wonder if I moved too slowly. 20 years is a long time to carry a secret. 8 months is a long time to plan revenge. But I don't regret seeking the truth. What I regret is how much of my life I spent standing still, frozen by grief and betrayal, when I could have been moving forward sooner. Don't make my mistake of letting wounds calcify into years of careful planning. The lesson I learned, and maybe this is what grandpa stories are supposed to teach, is that being right doesn't always make you whole. I was right about the fraud, right about the forgery, right to pursue justice through the courts. But righteousness and healing are different roads, and I walked one so long I almost forgot the other existed. Family isn't just biology. It's choice. I chose Ronan for 20 years before he knew I'd chosen him. That choice mattered more than any DNA test. And I believe God put me through this fire not to make me harder, but to teach me when to hold on and when to finally let go. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't confronting your betrayer, it's boarding a plane to somewhere new. So let me ask you, what did you think of my decision? Would you have done the same or handled it differently? Drop a comment and tell me your honest opinion. And if this story resonated with you, or if you know someone navigating their own version of family betrayal, please share it with them. These grandpa stories work best when they travel beyond just one listener. Subscribe to Dad's Revenge Stories if you want more true accounts like this one. I share them so others don't feel alone in their struggles. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time means everything to me. Final note. Certain details have been adjusted for privacy and storytelling, but the heart of this journey, the choices, the pain, the eventual peace, that's all real. God bless you wherever you are.